Hello, welcome to our podcast about krautrock bands and pocket calculators.
Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 5 of Should Have Sent a Poet, a podcast about the stories we tell beyond the stars. Today we're looking back at our very first arc and answering your questions. My name is Natalie Bickelhop, and I'm joined by my co-host, Natalie Epstein-Hogue.
I'm Natalie Epstein-Hogue. I'm so excited for our Socratic seminar, our synthesis episode, looking back at all four of the pre-contact movies we've just reviewed. I guess we're not so much a review joint as we are just like painstaking analysis.
Yeah, I think for the purposes of branding, we're a film review podcast.
I guess.
But that's kind of like
Media criticism, let's call it.
Yeah, more or less. That's kind of the beat that we're on.
Yeah.
On this show, we watch your favorite first contact and space exploration movies to discuss what they say about humanity and our wider world. If that sounds like something you're going to enjoy, check the show notes for our social media and how you can participate in Q&A episodes like this. And then with housekeeping out of the way, how are you doing, Nat?
I'm doing okay. I think, a little bit of a rough start to the day, but we're on the horse. We're podcasting. We're thinking about our pocket calculators.
Oh, the pocket calculators.
For the listen, the Ice Age cold open that you didn't. It's so cold you didn't even get it. Is that I spent like the last 5 minutes before we started recording showing Natalie Pocket Calculator by Kraftwerk, because it's just like such a silly song. I figured it would get our mood up, and I think it worked.
I've never heard it before. It was pretty groovy.
Kraftwerk is like really interesting if you're like a student of electronic music, but their music is so dinky. It's hilarious.
It is really. It's the thing that I was thinking to myself while we were listening to it is like, this is what plays in like a Gen Z person's version of like the 80s.
Yeah.
That's the kind of music that plays
I feel like
in like a mall or something.
I feel like that's very much the vibe of Kraftwerk, is like, like a Pendleton Ward creates some simulacrum of the 1970s.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. I always think of The Big Lebowski when I think of Kraftwerk, which is a great thing to think of.
That's just like your opinion, man.
We don't need to get into Jeff Bridges impressions. These are dangerous waters. People are gonna turn the podcast off. No, that's just my opinion, dude. The reason I say we can't get into them is because I'm insecure about my Jeff Bridges impression, and you're inviting me to do it. That's the real truth at the heart of this.
It's okay. I'll get my Jeff Bridges impressions in when we do Tron.
Oh, there we go.
In many, many years, once we've exhausted alien movies and move on to robot movies, or like I guess not even robots, like people living in the computer.
Yeah, computer people.
We're gonna find a platform to talk about Tron one of these days.
Well, the other thing is we're the masters of the pod, so we can talk about whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah. You're gonna wake up one day and this is gonna be a podcast about permacomputing.
I don't know about that.
It's the idea of like expanding the ideas around like permaculture and like building like the built environment around something that like is more regenerative with nature. It's the idea of like, what if we started building computers that were more in line with like natural ecosystems, because computing, as cool as computing is very bad for the environment.
Yeah.
Currently chock full of toxic chemicals, more so than most things.
And that says something, because we're all chock full of toxic chemicals, but that's okay.
Yeah. Anyways,
so where do you want to start? When the goal of this episode, we should lay this out, is we're looking back at the first four movies that we've covered. Our first arc of the podcast is how we've been referring to it behind the scenes. And that is 1997's Contact, 1977's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 2002's Signs. It's 2002.
Okay.
And then 2016's Arrival.
Yes.
And those are the first four movies that we've covered, and the theme that we've been working on is the literal first contact event, which these movies represent, as opposed to just as like looking to the future, our next arc is going to be movies that are post-contact, so worlds that have been touched by aliens and the fallout thereafter.
Yeah.
And so the goal is to look at what does it mean to meet aliens for the first time.
Yeah, that's the crux of the pre-contact arc, is just like, yeah, analyzing what stories are we telling about first contact, and sort of, yeah, like comparing and contrasting the things that we've watched so far.
Yeah.
Pulling back the curtain just a little bit, also after our post-contact season, where our post-contact arc, which is going to be, how do we tell stories that deal with the fallout of alien contact?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to have an arc that's just kind of more generally about space exploration movies, because that kind of, that fits in there somewhere. And I think the general plan for this podcast is that as we go on, we're kind of going to do these 4-episode arcs kind of all surrounding a specific theme.
Yeah.
To try and tease out some of like what these narratives are more collectively saying. And I think we picked a really good first 4 movies because they all kind of, to some degree or another, are in conversation with each other in a really cool and interesting way.
Yes, absolutely. I think when we were figuring out what we wanted to talk about and just sort of like throwing out names, I think we kind of we created a banger list for the first 4 episodes.
Oh my God, yeah.
I think we cooked real hard. And I think we hit all of the notes that we need to hit. Because we hit Contact was the obvious first choice as the namesake of the pod.
The eponymous. Yeah.
And so that was a easy layup, but I think we hit the epic highs of Arrival, which is I think I feel good to say the best first contact movie and one of the best movies of all time.
Yeah.
Which is very concerned with like there is some stuff about faith, but I think it's more concerned with like the sciences, linguistics as like a science.
Yeah, I feel like faith is going to be a theme that we discuss in like how all of these movies engage with them. But yeah, I almost feel like Arrival is not engaging with faith so much as it's engaging with trust.
Yes. Oh, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. And then we hit Signs, which of course is the most engaged with faith out of these movies. And we also hit Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is kind of a
we were talking about this before the episode.
Yeah, it's kind of a blank canvas to its own detriment.
Yeah.
Is the best way that I could put it. It's not staking a claim anywhere in particular. It feels like. And
I feel like of these 4 movies, Close Encounters is the one that, in order to gain themes from it, you really have to look at like what the author betrays about their worldview, more so than a movie like Arrival, where the author is kind of telling you their worldview. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I didn't expect Close Encounters of the Third Kind to be the odd one out here.
Neither did I. I was expecting it to be Signs.
Yeah, no, me too. Like all of these other movies are like, and I think it's just that like each of these other movies is like very engaged with a message that they have to tell. Whereas Close Encounters of the Third Kind is this film that's really like, I think its significance to the genre is so tied up in the vibes and in the like production choices and the visual language of the film so much more than it is any actual story, because you look at the story and you look for like textual stuff and it all is just very like, what I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. It's like I kept coming away from Close Encounters when I was looking for like, oh, what deeper meaning is this like detail exploring? Close Encounters is a movie where the curtains are a little bit just blue sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I think you and I both hate the metaphor of the curtains are just fucking blue.
Yeah.
We are an anti-curtains are just blue podcast.
Yeah. I so as a person who went to school for creative writing and literature, there's nothing I hate more than people who are like the curtains are just blue.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
But the tone of Close Encounters feels, there are so many places where I'm like, oh, that's a choice. Why was that choice made?
Yeah.
And the only real conclusion I can come to is because Spielberg thought it looked cool in the camera.
Yeah, and I think that's by and large that's how I feel about a lot of that movie. I feel like it
And
was the
that's
most insubstantial in a lot of ways.
yeah, and maybe that's just like blockbuster films more generally.
Yes, but also there are blockbusters that have so much meat to them, like
Fair.
thematically, and it I think it's going to be interesting when we go to other Spielberg movies,
Yeah.
and because there is a large amount of Spielberg alien movies. It's something that he is so like. Inevitably, we're going to talk about E.T. I think I would like to
Yeah.
talk about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal
Yeah.
Skull
We're gonna
because that
have we're
one.
gonna have to start keeping director tallies.
Oh, that's true. We should keep director tallies.
Um
Yeah, and keep track of
we've
who's
got
touching this subject the most.
I know we've got a Kubrick very much later. I think you can probably infer what that Kubrick movie is, listener.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you a brain exercise in figuring out which Kubrick movie we're covering.
It's The Shining.
Totally. Scored by Wendy Carlos, fun fact.
Yes.
Shout out to
My
Wendy
queen.
Carlos.
My
Love you, queen. And then we're also doing a Nolan movie.
Yes.
I think you can infer pretty well which one that is too. Yeah, we're gonna have to start keeping director tally.
We are. And I think Spielberg is gonna get the biggest tally.
He's done a lot of these.
He has done a lot of these, and I think we can talk about them in the order that they released and see how they grow and change and what he's interested in. But I am on Friday, so we record on Sundays usually. On Friday, I saw Disclosure Day, his newest Alien movie, and in my opinion, wasn't very good. Kind of fuck ugly. There's a lens flare in every single fucking shot.
Oh my god.
It's washed out to all hell. And the biggest redeeming factor was Coleman Domingo was there, and I love Coleman Domingo. So,
I've not seen Disclosure Day. I don't have any real opinions.
Yeah, I think that's one that we'll talk about in the far future. Once we both watch it, and maybe when we do a Spielberg arc.
Yeah.
But I think going back to these movies and trying to kind of like summarize what they're individually about.
Just like very, very generally.
Yeah. We have a little outline here for us.
Yes.
If you want to touch on the outline in terms of what the theses of these movies are.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So thank you is perfectly into my first point. Yeah, I have a couple of points of outline where I just want to compare and contrast where I want to compare and contrast each of these movies and hopefully tease out a little bit of what they have to say. So the first bullet point I have is in-text thesis. And this is specifically not just like what generally is this movie about, but specifically I feel that each of these movies has a place where the author is speaking directly through a character and like getting up on a soapbox.
Yeah.
In Contact, I think it's when, government officials start showing up at the VLA and Ellie Arroway has to be like, I think Drumlin is like, well, why didn't they just speak English? And Ellie Arroway has to be like, well, they can't assume that everyone speaks English, and who are we to expect that they learned our language? They spoke to us in the language of science, which is what I always expected.
Yeah.
That's very much like a thesis of the film that like alien contact would come in the form of the language of science. This is also a soapbox that Sagan got on at many points in his life when he was doing the Voyager plaques, when he did the Arecibo message that, someone made a cornfield in Wiltshire responding to. Yeah, Carl Sagan this was like a huge thing for him, was like figuring out like, okay, how do you communicate in the language of science? Because that's the only commonality that we can expect, is that the laws of physics are the same for us as they are for them.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, I think it's interesting how Arrival in particular plays with this idea.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's for a later bullet point.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you on how Contact is. I think it's a real scientist look at the idea of first contact.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other things that's important to touch on is there is the preoccupation. All of these movies are kind of preoccupied with different themes. Like Contact is very like science centric. Arrival is very language centric. Signs is very like faith centric. I think the other interesting thing to talk about in regards to sort of when we talk about like the mouthpiece for the author and kind of the thesis that they're laying out, I think it's also important, or like I think it's valuable to look at the characters who are speaking for them and who those voices of authority are in that world. And I think the interesting thing is like Contact is obviously like a scientist in like a politician's world is the best way that I can explain it, because Ellie Arroway is like she's a real scientist, and there is Drumlin, who is sort of like her rival, who is like a politician scientist is the best way to put it. And I think there is value placed on science for the sake of science in the mind of it. In that film, that is sort of like the lens and the focus and the really valuable thing portrayed and sort of like conceptualized by the movie, I think.
Yeah.
And then do we want to talk about Close Encounters?
Yeah. And so I think, Close Encounters, the movie I just talked about, how like it's really hard to pick through and find deeper meaning to any of the creative decisions. But I think the in-text thesis we have for this movie is the opening line, which is, "Are we the first?" I think that I feel like that really gets to the heart of what this movie is about, because it's like, okay, the plot is about Roy's inner turmoil as he is like been like shown this glimpse into the cosmos by seeing a UFO, and he goes crazy and loses his family because of it. But I think more overarchingly, because this movie isn't just about Roy Neary, it just follows him. I think more generally, this is a movie that is like so engaged with the vibes of there are little green men and the government's covering it up.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a tableau in that way. Like it's just
definitely,
it is exploring some events that lead up to this the conversation, as it's called in text.
Yeah.
And so I just think like, "Are we the first?" is like the closest thing I can come up with. I accidentally hit the keyboard.
You didn't even say a brand.
I didn't even say a brand. But I feel like that's like the closest thing that I can think to just like an in-text thesis is like, "Are we the first? Are we alone?"
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing that I want to relate that to in terms of Close Encounters is the movie also has I think we were talking about this earlier. Close Encounters has a preoccupation with sort of the childlike wonder and immaturity of its main character, Roy.
Yeah.
And I think Are We the First plays into that, because the aliens are so Jesus coded, or they're just like they're very religiously coded.
Yeah.
Like we get 10 Commandments as like a film on TV at the very beginning of the movie, and just like there's like Devil's Tower is kind of like Mount Sinai. Like there's like a lot of this like religious imagery throughout the film that sort of like plays into this idea that the aliens are of the divine in some ways, or they are analogous to the divine. And so the question of are we the first is kind of, I feel like it's kind of a thesis of, it is both a thesis of in the grander sense of the universe, are we the first, but it's also a theological question of like, is God real? Are we the first creations, or is our conception of theology and like a greater creator is that false and like provably wrong? And I think the movie kind of comes down on the idea that like I don't think it rebukes religion by like any means, but I think it portrays aliens as sort of like a confirmation that there is a higher power in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
There is some sort of intelligent design that is like creating these like intelligent life across worlds, and we are not the first. And I think that is kind of I don't know. It's an interesting thing for it to touch on, and I think in the same way that like Roy is very childlike, it is kind of the, how do I phrase this? He's kind of, because he's a child. It is also like the movie asking like, is humanity the chicken or the egg? Is humanity the chicken
Yeah.
or the egg? Are we the egg that has spawned forth from other civilizations, like after other civilizations, or are we the beginning of this lineage?
Hmm.
And I find that "Are we the first?" being the very first line of the movie is very loaded once you start to look at sort of the religious implications, as well as like the universal and personal character motive, or like personal characteristics of Rainieri. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that thought. I don't think I have a whole lot to add.
Yeah. And then we can touch on signs.
Yeah, I think Signs has kind of the most explicit of these, where there's this whole scene where we're sitting in front of the TV watching the lights over Mexico City. The kids have fallen asleep, and Graham and Meryl are just like up talking, and Graham has this whole like soliloquy that I didn't write down in my notes, but I did get the one line of it, which is, do you believe in signs or miracles, or do you believe that truly we are here on our own?
Yeah.
That's just kind of like, yeah, that is the core theme of the movie. Like, do you believe in miracles? Do you, like, Signs is so explicitly a movie about faith. I like textually Christian faith because Graham's a preacher, but also like knowing a little bit more about Shyamalan, the stories that he liked to tell. Like, it's not explicitly a Christian story.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, it is about wider faith, and I think in a lot of ways it's also about hope, and there's like a lot about like the despair of grief that overtakes Father Graham in
Yeah.
that film. Another surprising thing to me is that there is a lot of grief tied up in these First Contact films.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's not a bullet point in here. But yeah, that's
Yeah, there. That is an interesting through line that I wish I was more prepared to touch on
yeah.
as a thing that like is recurring in these films.
Yeah, I think
I think it's one of those things where like grief is like very core. It's a very core human emotion, and so it makes sense that it shows up. But like especially with Signs and Arrival, it's so omnipresent in those films, and it colors like the entire experience of them in a
yeah.
way that I find really interesting.
And it's even like, there's like a passing grief theme in Close Encounters where Barry's mother, who I'm sorry that I don't know her name.
Yeah,
I guess I don't. I'm sorry, women.
I'm sorry, women.
sorry,
I also don't
women.
remember.
The mother of the small child who will hand you a wet corn puff. Like, yeah, when Barry gets abducted, like she has this whole like news moment where it's like, oh, did she really disappear the kid? Or like, I it's like it's not quite played as a grief scene. We kind of don't acknowledge it. We just watch the scene pass by. But like, yeah, she loses her son and goes out to the middle of nowhere in Wyoming because she has psychic visions about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's, yeah.
I think that's really interesting. There's also, I mean, now that you point that out, sorry, my brain totally farted there.
We're having a sleepy Sunday today.
We're having a sleepy Sunday a little bit. The mom's name in Close Encounters, I looked it up. It's Jillian.
Jillian.
So shout out Jillian. But there is, I think, the questioning of the grief in the same way that Roy's like sanity is questioned, I think is really interesting in Close Encounters. And I think that kind of gets combined in a lot of ways in Arrival, where there's the questioning of Luisa's sanity as like the movie goes on, where it's like, are you capable of doing this job?
Yeah.
Like, have you like lost it a little bit too much for you to like, are you too deep in this? Do you need to be brought out? Well, also the exploration of the incoming grief that she is going to experience by the end of the film, like linearly in terms of like the actual timeline of the universe that she is going to experience. And I think that is that's another point where like I think Arrival is a very interesting combination of a lot of these films, and I think one of the reasons that it is the best first contact film is because it touches on all of these different movies
Oh my God, yeah.
and draws from them and synthesizes them so perfectly.
Yeah. No, I think it's like not a coincidence that Arrival is like an amazing story that like is unique among first contact stories, but I do think that it is aided by the fact that it is the most recent of the films we've touched on here, and so it
Yeah.
does have an opportunity to respond to all of the media that precedes it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that's maybe also some grace that we give to Close Encounters is that Close Encounters is the earliest of these pieces of media,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
has no opportunity to engage with any of the other three pieces.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are definitely first contact movies prior to Close Encounters, but I don't think they're quite on the same. I Whether or not Close Encounters is on the same level as the other three movies in terms of like engaging with the thematics of it is like questionable. It might be like a tier below,
Yeah.
but I think in 1977 there wasn't really anything on the tier of like a Contact or a Signs or an
Yeah.
Arrival in terms of like engaging with first contact as a genuine concept.
This movie came out the same year as Star Wars to the extent that like their production pipelines were kind of intertwined.
Yes, exactly, and it's like Spielberg and Lucas are close friends.
Yeah.
And so 77 a big year for sci-fi.
77 was a big year for sci-fi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess moving on to our next bullet point, after our sub bullet point of how these movies deal with grief, I want to talk about how each of these movies deal with language. Unfortunately, I feel like Signs is a little bit the odd man out here.
Mm.
I think maybe we can talk about the. Actually, no. I think I'll start off with Signs because I wanted to talk about the sound design choices again. We were talking about this a little bit last week while you were just like hanging out. So since we did that episode, I like watched Signs again. I just let it wash over me, and I've been thinking so much about what you had to say about the film, and I've been thinking so much about like my hang up where I felt like a lot of the sound design really took me out of feeling like I was watching a movie.
Yeah.
And I put the first and second fully on blast in that episode
Yeah.
as I made these complaints, but I like both of those sound designers like are doing enough other work that like is positive, and they keep getting work, so they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And so I think it does lead me to wonder, like, was the sound design in Signs like really just a choice? And it was just like a weird choice? Not that like, I don't know, like I think being allowed to experiment with an art form is the only way that things get innovated, and sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting to peel back, like, when you make an artistic choice that reads as poor craft,
Mm-hmm.
how do you engage with that? How do you like I think that's like an open creative question for me as we're exploring this, is like, yeah, if you really want this movie to feel like an out of body experience, and so some of that means that like the sound effects are just like meant to feel a little bit off.
Yeah.
How do you engage with that without it feeling like poor craft? Because that line gets really fuzzy because the listener isn't privy to those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really great question, and I think ultimately the way that I view art in the sort of the pipeline is like there is the art before you put it out into the world, and so that's the art that you're making and having conversations with the team who is helping you produce it. And I think I think we're kind of theorizing that behind the scenes or at least in my mind, behind the scenes, they were like having this conversation of like, I want this to feel sort of otherworldly, out of body. And then there's the piece of art that exists once it's exposed to mass audiences, and they don't have that context, like you said. And I think ultimately at that point, it comes down to how generous the audience is, and whether I think a lot of it comes down to the framework that you're or how you're approaching the piece of art. And I think sort of like the subject position from which you're approaching the piece of art, because if you go into Signs expecting to watch like a movie, like something that is going to like entertain you and make sense and not sort of like be hostile in these weird ways, then you're going to watch it and you're going to be like, well, that jackass had no idea what he was doing. But if you go into it expecting or like being open to something that is like, I don't want to say that Signs is like challenging. I don't think it's like a difficult and like really like obtuse film in a way that like really like complex piece of literature is. Like it's not working on the same level.
Signs is not Infinite Jest.
Yes, exactly. But it is like causing friction with the audience on purpose on some level in my read. And so if you go into the experience of watching that movie open to that idea at the very least, or like knowing that it is going to sort of like fuck with you in that way, then that changes how you engage with it. And I think that's kind of my like philosophy with like a lot of art and making these decisions that seem like they are bad decisions or they're poor craft. And I think the thing is ultimately like what is conceived of as poor craft is dependent on like the mainstream and like what we consider like an average like good movie. And once you change what the goal, like if your goal is not to make good average like Hollywood movie, then the choices that like what becomes good craft changes.
Or even just having a profoundly different definition of what good means for this piece.
Yeah, exactly. And like if you look at like directors like David Lynch, like there's a lot of directors whose goal is to, I don't want to say fuck with the audience because that kind of makes it sound more juvenile, but it is to like put the audience off kilter and sort of like challenge your expectations of like what this piece of art is doing. And I think that's like really exciting and fun. But if you're not open, if you're not like ready to engage with it in that way, like if you're not prepared to, then it kind of becomes a thing where it's like, oh fuck, this sucks.
And so maybe that's our takeaway from the sound design elements of Signs. I still really wish that they had like done anything in that final scene instead of just having it be mostly silent footage.
That one it gets a little too hard for me to really defend.
But I do think there is like something to be said for like, it's important, especially as we get deeper into these films, to like have that experimental mindset, to have that attitude of like, I at least have to be open to whatever this movie's throwing at me. And like developing that muscle of being able to engage with it on its own terms.
Yes, exactly. And I think we had this conversation a while ago. You said something about Dan Olson introducing the idea that art is created by people. As like a paradigm to the internet.
I think the video in which he does that is called the Thermian argument, although that's like not a term that gets used to describe this phenomenon. I've had a hard time understanding like truly like what the name of this thing is. I've heard Watsonian versus Holmesian analysis used, where like Watsonian analysis, literally Watson and Holmes. Watsonian analysis is looking at the text really deeply and understanding things within the concept of the text. This is where we get our old friend from the bonus episode, like, oh, by and large is like the evil corporation underpinning all Pixar films. Versus Holmesian analysis is like, okay, this is a piece of media made by a person. I'm going to find out more about this person and their background to understand why they would put this into a piece of media.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe those are our words. But yeah, I don't know. I feel very strongly that like I'm always looking at these pieces as like okay, this was every piece of media is like made by a person.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing for me there is like the real best way. The secret they won't tell you is that the best way to analyze art is to do both and
Yeah.
try and hold both at the same time. Because death of the author is like a thing that I believe in, where what an author intends doesn't fully matter at the end of the day, because they release the piece of art, and then whether or not they intended for a thing to mean XYZ doesn't actually matter, because once the piece of art is created, that's what it means. Like that is how you read it. That it is being capable. It is capable of being read that way.
Yeah.
But then you also synthesize that with this is a person who has a whole life and like thinks about like things this way and that way, and that sort of like colors everything. And I think there is a tightrope walk to combine them without like falling into one or the other, and sort of giving like preferential treatment to either.
And from walking that tightrope, we get dialectics. One of the best things.
Exactly.
For the listener who doesn't know what dialectics are when there are two things.
Pretty much.
When you hold two things, that's a dialectic.
Yeah. I'm holding the microphone and the phone. This is a dialectic.
Synthesizing a dialectic.
Yeah.
Sorry. We were talking about how these movies deal with language, and
we got on that tangent, and I was like,
that was a great sidebar, though.
It was a really good sidebar, but it's like I'm not totally sure how we got there from language.
I think,
I like it.
I was talking about sound design, because I think that's the only way in which science isn't engaged in like constructing alien languages. It's just like but the aliens might as well be like a cryptid.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, they don't speak.
Yeah, they don't speak.
They hiss, whether or not that's their language.
And they make little like
clicking sounds,
noises.
That was so crazy. That was really good. That was a really good sound effect. I don't know how that's gonna read to everybody on the pod, but that was like, whoa! I didn't know you could do that. The thing that I was going to say, language wise, the thing that the science is really engaging with is swearing.
Oh yeah.
Which I find really interesting.
Yeah, the language of the preacher.
Yes, the language of the preacher, and
Joaquin Phoenix going, Brothers.
"We're gonna beat your ass, bitch," which is one of my favorite lines in that movie.
I'm insane with anger.
Fucking classic.
Yeah, amazing.
How can you not give that movie 5 stars?
Great line. But anyway, our other 3 movies that are a little bit more explicitly engaged with language.
Yeah.
So obviously, Contact, the whole deal is language comes to us, alien language, or aliens speak to us in the language of science. Aliens send the signal at the hydrogen line times pi, both of which being like universal physical fundamentals. I think it's interesting the way in which Arrival has some relativity stuff that it engages with that almost challenges some of the things that Sagan presupposes in his work, namely that aliens experience the same 3 dimensions that we do. This is an idea I've been thinking a lot about. Forget beings that experience... Because we know that space-time is 4-dimensional. We experience 3 space dimensions and 1 time dimension, and that time dimension, as best we can tell, moves forward.
Yeah.
But there is... within the math of relativity, there's an idea called eternalism that, like, the future must exist in some capacity, kind of building on this idea that, like, our time dimension could also just be a space dimension that we're experiencing as time, and that's down to our perception. Max Planck also had some ideas about this that I couldn't even begin to understand. The work of Max Planck is, like, so dense and crazy because he was just, like, thinking about atoms. But... I almost feel like in the background, it's never stated in text, but in the background, some of what we can infer about the heptapods and their knowledge and the fact that they don't understand basic arithmetic, but do understand like Bell's theorem. I've also been thinking about this because Project Hail Mary kind of plays a similar beat where it's like they don't understand relativity, but they understand stuff that like we can't imagine. I've been thinking about like extra textually, what if heptapods or a similar creature experience 3 dimensions, but it's a different 3 dimensions? Like, what if you experience X, Y, and T as your spatial dimension, and you're moving forward in the Z axis?
God,
otherwise known as falling.
that fucks with my mind.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of those like kind of impossible to
parse.
Yeah,
even.
and like imagine as like as a perspective thing.
Yeah.
But I think it is a really interesting thing that sci-fi movies, especially like alien movies like this, they do love to be like, well, they don't understand algebra, but they sure do understand XYZ, like really difficult concept.
And if I can digress to my point about Contact, I feel like every time since that a movie does that, it is directly in conversation with either Contact or Carl Sagan's real world work on communicating in the language of science.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the idea that like, actually, the aliens understand the laws of physics in a completely different way to us, and so therefore none of our physical explorations matter. is like a really fun like gotcha that people have kind of come up with in the wake of Contact.
Yeah. It's a very fun twist on it because I think the other thing that it does is because Contact is so thoroughly about the scientific communication angle, I think it opens up the door for different forms of. I think the fact that like the heptapods don't have like the same understanding of like science and mathematics that we do, like they have like a different variation on it. I think that is like fundamental to sort of priming the audience to sort of buy into the like we need to translate this way rather than communicating through like a mathematical lens or a scientific lens.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great place that like that Arrival like is like standing almost directly in opposition to Contact.
Yeah, which I really adore about those movies. I think they're so directly in conversation with each other. It's really awesome.
Yeah. No, it's great. And then Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I said it in the episode and I'll say it again. Those aliens are Americans.
They are.
They're driving pickup trucks. They're driving pickup trucks. They're drinking cola. They're smoking cigarettes. Wearing cowboy hats.
Imagine they walk off the mothership.
They listen to they listen to music in 12-tone equal temperament.
Yeah.
They seem to have an understanding of the Romantic era of European classical music. It stopped me whenever.
No, yeah, I think that is one of the really interesting things about Close Encounters because it kind of betrays a Amerocentrism that is so fascinating. And I think the other thing that it does is it presupposes that aliens deign it important enough to observe us and really like learn about us.
Yeah.
Which I think is another thing that Arrival sort of like flips on its head in a lot of ways where the heptapods know about us and they're coming to us for a very specific reason, but they're not interested in communicating with us on our level. They're like, you're gonna fucking learn our shit.
Yeah.
Which I really love as like an inversion of both Contact and Close Encounters, where it's like they are dumbing things down to like communicate with us in a lot of ways is like the best way that I can explain it.
I was reading an interview. One sec. I have to. Sorry, I had to check a fact real quick. Interesting narrative point on like the heptapods in Arrival kind of force humanity to do all the work in a really profound way that flips a lot of the tropes of the genre on its head.
Yeah.
I was reading an interview that Patrice Vermette, the production designer for Arrival, did with the LA Times. I thought it was interesting. A lot of that interview was like kind of the interviewer and Patrice talking shop about like the film production industry and about like who his mentors were. But as it relates to the production of Arrival. One, I got explicit confirmation in that Patrice Vermette was very inspired by James Turrell installations in designing the way that the shell looked. And then also a thing that he mentions is that, like, I think he and Villeneuve both kind of agreed that the heptapod ships, it is important and significant that the heptapod ships hang about 28 feet above the ground. It's this idea that they came thousands and thousands of light years to Earth, and yet we still need to make that last step. We need to bridge that 30-foot gap.
Yeah.
I think that's so wonderful, and that's such an incredible, like, meta detail
Yes.
of the story that I think, like, says so much about the character of the heptapods.
Yes, and I think the thing that it says is, I think the heptapods are, in comparison to other aliens in Contact and Close Encounters, Contact, those aliens are gift givers.
Yeah.
They are here to bestow knowledge upon us. And I think it less so in Contact because because the thing is, they're giving us this knowledge. They are, like, sending it directly to us or providing it to us, and advancing our evolution artificially in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The thing that the heptapods are doing in an Arrival is they're coming to Earth, and then they're saying, okay, we're going to teach you. And you need to be willing to engage with these ideas, and you need to come to the classroom.
And you don't, and you have to figure out that it is a classroom.
Exactly. You need to want this. You need to engage with this seminar and learn, because you need to actually understand this. You need to actually understand the things that we're teaching you, in order for the way that the universe is going to play out, for it to play out that way.
Yeah.
We can't just give this to you and, like, fuck off,
Yeah.
It's not like we can drop a care package. We are bestowing genuine, literal knowledge upon you,
and we need you to play in that process. This is where I'm like, this goes right next into our next bullet point, dealing with faith. This is a lot of where I'm like, I feel like Arrival is a movie that is really playing off of, if there's a faith theme to Arrival, it's the like faith and trust.
Yeah.
It's the it is like faith that these creatures won't try to hurt us. It's faith that humanity will figure out how not to destroy itself. And it's a little bit the divide that we watch happen as we get into the climax of the film, where, like, Louise, like, goes into, like, a room and, like, locks herself in with the satellite phone while people are pointing, like, M16s at her.
Yeah.
I think, it comes from this place of her understanding that she knows the heptapod language and can see the future now, but I think also it does come from this, like, she has to make the leap of believing that what Abbott has told her is true.
Yeah.
And believing that, like, oh, this is what I'm seeing. And it also just had to come from this profound place of trust where she took off her hazmat suit first against everyone else's better advice. She came into this room of scientists who were trying to solve this like a science problem, or military people trying to solve this like a military problem. And she went, oh, like, no, we need to talk to them like they're people. Yeah. We needed to treat them like they're people.
Yeah.
Something no one else had seemed to even consider, just because their walls were up.
Yes.
And it's even a movie that I think asks us, the viewer, to have faith about where it's going in the way that it engages non-linearly with the plot. I think there are a lot of places, especially on your first watch of Arrival, where you're just kind of along for the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a ride it is.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I think about with Arrival is there's, like, an interview with Villeneuve who says that, like, one of the important things is that the arrival of the heptapods kind of, in a lot of ways, it causes, like, a massive questioning of faith, like, of real world, or, like, actual religions.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing that the heptapods in Arrival do is that they, like I said before, Contact in Close Encounters, those aliens are gift givers. They are a little bit divine. They are a little bit a higher power. In Arrival, they're not here to give us sort of like bestow on high this knowledge. They are here to teach us, which is a very different mode. And I think it kind of, like Villeneuve said, it's kind of the shattering of religion in this way, where the things that come from on high, the higher powers, they're not actually higher powers. They're our peers. And our peers have things to teach us. But inevitably we are equal. In 5,000 years, we need to go help them.
Yeah.
And we get them out of a pickle. And so it's one of those things where Arrival is kind of interested in like a humanist look at the first encounter experience, where it's just other people in a way that like a lot of other first encounter movies do not treat the aliens as like equals or people.
Yeah, even Close Encounters, which, I've kind of argued like treats its subject matters as American nationals.
Yeah.
Even in treating them as American, they're not treating them as people. They're treating them as like this little green men gremlin creature.
Yeah.
I think Arrival is a profound piece in the way that it's like these heptapods are fully formed creatures that are just as intelligent as you and I. They're just like so far outside of our conception of what an anthropomorphic being looks like.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's part of what works really well about the movie is it kind of it shatters the preconceived notion of what an alien looks like, and sort of it's just really great. It works on all levels, I think, and it just like that the fact that they look so very alien helps to sort of like break down the walls for the audience and like their preconceived notions of like what a first contact story is going to be. And then it invites the audience to realize like, oh, these are just people.
Yeah.
These are just people despite the differences.
Yeah. No, I think it's incredible in that way. It's incredible in the ways that it plays with and subverts the motifs of other Contact films.
Yeah.
Talking about how Contact deals with faith. Contact is dealing with faith in like a very different definitional sense than even like Signs. Even though both films are, when we talk about faith, we're explicitly talking about Christianity for most of it.
Yeah.
I don't even think Contact, even in trying to recognize like, oh, well, Father Joss is like this character that symbolizes the faithful, but he is a Christian. This is an issue that like white people fall into more often than not, is assuming that every religious person is a Christian, when in fact, like, I think at least half of the religious people in the world aren't.
Yeah.
But Contact is really engaged, I guess, with a scientist's viewpoint of religion. This is a thing that, like, once again, is like very Christocentric. Yeah, Christian scientists are a different thing. Scientists who are Christians. That conflict exists only if you take a literal interpretation of things like Genesis. Being a scientist who is a religious Christian, the majority of like scientist Christians I am aware of, it's a situation of like, well, yeah, I think that the world was created, the world and the heavens were all created in 7 days by God, and on the seventh day he rested. That's like a poetic interpretation.
Yeah.
And I think even like, I think there are the radical Christian right wing would have you believe that biblical literalism is a much more historically commonplace and popular viewpoint, when biblical literalism is honestly kind of a modern construction, in a similar way to the verse in Leviticus 13 that like supposedly condemns gay people was like a mistranslation that I think dates literally to like 40s or 50s.
Oh, shit, really?
And like, yeah, basically because like Christians don't ever actually bother to learn Hebrew and look at the texts in Hebrew, in specifically in ancient biblical Hebrew. And that's like important for discerning nuance out of an ancient text like that, because, some things don't translate to English. And one of the things that got bungled in translation in Leviticus 13 is that in all likelihood, the original Hebrew of that verse is talking about pedophilia,
Right.
or
Yeah.
like the practice of like pederasty, which is pedophilia, just like historical flavors.
Yeah.
We really don't need to split hairs on that. But that verse in Leviticus is like arguably like a man shall not lie with a boy, not a man shall not lie with a man.
Right. Yeah.
Which is saying a very different thing.
Yes.
And, you know, it's this, I think this is my biggest issue with like a lot of Christianity that we see in our current day, which is just that like you've, in the same way that alien truthers have a viewpoint they're trying to get to and they're assembling facts to get there, a lot of right-wing fundamentalist Christians are starting from their racist, homophobic, misogynist, insert any number of other prejudices. Everything that strays outside of the white picket fence 1950s Mad Men ad. The like, yeah, it's this idea of like faith and religion are only, or religion and science are only in conflict when your religion is explicitly anti-science.
Yeah.
And plenty of other religions thread being pro-science. In a way that I think is really I just think it's interesting to explore that like where contact is engaged with science versus faith, it is actually engaged with science versus fundamentalist Christianity.
It very much
and it
so.
doesn't acknowledge that. It doesn't acknowledge that we're talking about fundamentalist Christianity. We're talking about all religion.
Yeah.
But the actual problem is fundamentalist Christianity.
Yeah, and I think you see that in the like antagonist being like the fire and brimstone preacher, and who like does a terrorist attack, like a Christian extremist terrorist attack, and I think it never names that is like the opposition that it's fighting, but it portrays it, and it just like it doesn't directly call attention to it like verbally in any way, but it very clearly portrays it.
Yeah.
Which I find really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's just, I'm not sure what else to say other than just like talking myself in circles about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think that's like interesting that like Contact does honestly like a note that that like anti-theists hit a lot. I don't know that Carl Sagan was necessarily an anti-theist, but I feel like he gets the Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens crowd really likes Carl Sagan.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I feel like posthumously he kind of gets lumped into those circles.
I would say so, but I think if you like when you read the novel, I think it becomes clear that
I mean, Ellie Airway in the novel is like purports to be a Christian.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so I think she herring Carl Sagan on accident. Sorry, King.
Carl Sagan.
I think he would chafe at being characterized as an anti-theist.
I agree. I think he would chafe at that too. I think that is much more of like a one community, the community that likes Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, and also the community that like did a witch hunt against Anita Sarkeesian. I don't know why that crowd also fell in with like radical anti-feminism. Maybe it's the other opinions of Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the capital A atheist movement, we'll call it, because like it is like this weird subset of non-theists, of anti-theists, not actually just like everyone who just kind of doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's a little where I am. I just kind of, I grew up in a very like fundy Christian community. I got kicked out of my fundamentalist Christian school because I got outed as trans. And so I think that pretty well informs my feelings on Christianity, especially as the church stands right now. And if I have to choose a religious affiliation, I think I'm just kind of like, I don't know, could be something.
Yeah.
I sort of operate on, I'm going to do my best. And if I die and go to science, then whatever. If I die and go to heaven, then if I die and go to the pearly gates, I hope that God sees that I did my best.
Yeah.
That's a little where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to approach it. I'm definitely like a spiritual person, not necessarily super engaged with the organized religion, but there's a comfort in spiritualism, I think, and a belief in some sort of unifying thing.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have like a super great grasp on it.
I feel like
myself.
I graft a lot of those feelings onto like the gaps in our physics and math knowledge.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I think like all very good stuff to talk about.
definitely.
I think science is engaged with faith in like a very different way,
Mm-hmm.
where like science is like, I think science is actually engaged with faith in a very general way, despite also being explicitly Graham and Meryl and the whole family are Christians.
Yeah.
Because yeah, ultimately it's, I think the like the big shot at the end where Meryl gets hit with the poison vape fluid and everyone thinks that he's gonna die, but because he was already in an asthmatic attack,
Yeah.
his lungs were closed, the poison didn't get in, his lungs were closed, the poison didn't get in.
Yeah.
I think that really gets down to the core of like what Signs has to say about faith, is that like Signs is a movie that really presents that like even when hard things happen, you have to have faith that there are strings being pulled that you don't understand.
Yeah.
Which like is, I guess, is an idea that comforts some people. I don't find it very comforting. As someone who's like I've touched on this in the podcast. I'm a very aggrieved person.
Yeah.
I'm haunted. This bitch is haunted. It's not an idea I feel very comforting. I kind of don't like the idea that like all my friends are dead for a reason.
Yeah.
But it's comforting to some people, and I'm not gonna like yuck that as artistic expression.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely chafe at the idea that people dying is a part of some greater plan.
I think it was a thing that I got told a lot around the time that my first friend, who was a preacher's child and who also got murder-suicided by said preacher.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people tried to tell me that around the time that happened, mostly because like the funeral was at a church. I was around a lot of Christians while I was in town for that. And it's just like, it's so like, I don't understand. I don't say this facetiously. I truly do not understand the kind of person that is comforted by that. Yeah. That is a worldview that is foreign to me. The idea that like my friend died for like some reason, whether it was like, I don't know why. I think my friend just got murdered for being trans, and that fucking sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. Yeah, I can't speak to that worldview because it's something that I don't hold, and I feel kind of similarly about it. Yeah, but it fucking sucks that people were telling you that. It's like
it is the scene in Contact where like Ellie's like sitting outside after her dad dies.
Yeah,
and the preacher is like, God works in mysterious ways. I don't understand how anyone finds that comforting. She didn't find that comforting.
No, and it's a hard thing to say to a person.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, that's fucking unfair.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk about that forever because it's just like so many shades of fucked up to say to a person.
Yeah.
Just unprompted. But I'm sorry that you were told that so many times.
Yeah. It's on a lighter note. I think the way that Close Encounters of the Third Kind is engaging with faith, I wrote in my notes, the 70s every man's descent into madness until he's inevitably proven extremely correct about everything.
Yeah.
This is a boomer's wet dream, I'm gonna be real.
Oh like, my god, yeah.
this is Grandpa's, all of his Fox News conspiracies are being proven right in real time.
Yeah, like it's so interesting. The thing that we were talking about before we started recording was Spielberg has this like fascination with like the pursuit of knowledge and the idea that like knowing the truth is like a virtuous and pure thing, and it's kind of like untaintable. And Roy Neary is this like very childlike immature person who becomes the avatar for that, and because he's so childlike, that sort of like by virtue he is like untainted, quote unquote. And so it like expresses the virtue and purity of this idea that he just needs to know. Like curiosity is like the ultimate like pure thing, and like letting things lie is the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah, and you can be as much of an asshole to get to that end as you need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanna lodge a complaint. I wanna talk to whoever's in charge.
man, you're on the black side.
Bro, you've been disappeared.
Yeah, like I said last time, the guy in charge now is God.
Yeah.
So fucking brave,
buddy.
Like, you're way out of your jurisdiction, man.
Yeah. Francois Truffaut can't help you with this one, bud.
No, he cannot. You're fucked. And yeah, I think that is there's another thing that Spielberg's really fascinated by, and it is kind of like the knowledge of the universe and the truth of aliens kind of drives you mad and makes you mentally ill,
Fair enough.
gives you like a mental disability, which is it's playing on shades of like cosmic horror in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But it also kind of plays on like, I don't know if like savant tropes is like the right way of characterizing it.
Like a little bit, yeah. Like
Yeah.
this crazy person is actually more correct about everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like this crazy person is really good at sculpting now. Right here, he becomes an excellent sculptor.
And actually, he has the real knowledge, and everyone else is like wrong and living in a deluded fantasy.
Yeah, it's kind of this this appeal to like magical thinking in a lot of ways, where it's like that is like the purest form of thought. It's weird.
Yeah, like unfortunately, like something that has done societal damage now in like the QAnon era. Mm-hmm. Where a bunch of people think that they have the correct knowledge and that all of the real reliable sources are wrong.
Yeah.
The whole advent of the post-truth era that we now live in.
Yeah,
I feel like really has its roots in like the post-Watergate, also like through the Reagan and Bush years, leading into the 9/11 year, just like this rolling American psychosis that has been building up since the late Cold War.
Yeah, absolutely. Americans are just so atomized in this way that like we can't fucking trust anybody else.
Yeah.
And so there's always a secret being held over you.
Yeah.
Your neighbor's a commie. Nixon did Watergate.
Military paranoia, like a common thread through, I think, every single one of these movies.
Yeah.
We don't really, like, we only see, like, the army recruiter in Signs, but he's still there and he's still playing an important part.
Definitely.
I think that's another ghost theme that didn't make it into my outline, is, like, yeah, the military, the specific fears of the military are, like, reigning very heavy in every single one of these films.
Yes, definitely. And I think the interesting thing about Close Encounters is that the fear is kind of the truth will get out. And we can't control it.
Yeah, it's like, well, we need to keep the secret so that there isn't rioting in the streets.
Yeah.
Arrival, the secret they were never able to keep anything a secret, and so there is immediately rioting in the streets. Mm-hmm. And the fear is that, like, the aliens are going to turn us all against each other. And even, like, I think Arrival is, like, playing the most with, like, really engaging with the military apparatus and the psychosis they're in.
Definitely.
Versus, like, Signs, which I feel like we really just get we get a nod to military paranoia in Signs.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it's not much more than a nod. And then in Contact, once again, just like with this being like a politics drama, like a science drama politics movie, we get, even though we're dealing with like the civilian state apparatus, mm-hmm. the presence of kits and of CIA stuff, and the fact that Arroway has to be like, yeah, can you get the guys with guns to stand outside? This is a civilian facility.
Yeah.
It's still there. It's more in the background. Contact isn't so much about that paranoia. I mean, it is about that paranoia, but it is more so about, the big kids at the table asking what the right thing to do is, and mm-hmm. Nobody having a good answer because we're in uncharted waters.
Yeah.
As opposed to Arrival, where everyone in the military is consumed by this paranoia, and Dr. Arroway and like maybe Ian Donnelly are the two people who can actually think clearly about any of this.
Literally. Yeah. The paranoia and the propaganda that sort of like permeates all these movies. You can see the fingerprints all over it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think once you start like engaging with like it's really interesting post Cold War to watch these movies because after the Cold War ended, Hollywood kind of had like a difficult time like finding a superpower competitor
Yeah.
for the U.S. And I think Aliens slot right in there.
Yeah.
Where it's like this other superpower that we can engage in a Cold War with,
Yeah.
and like we can keep secrets from, and I find that really interesting. The different roles and like different levels that these aliens play in both the consciousness of like the characters, but also like the wider political landscape of their individual films. They work on a lot of different levels, and they're doing a lot of different things at the same time, which is it's really fascinating, and part of why I was so excited to do this project.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking on that, do we want to talk about how the aliens are characterized in these films and like the differences between them?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna like give like a very like basic overview. So Contact, we never actually see the aliens. As we mentioned, they take the form of Ellie Arroway's dead father. Certainly a choice. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, we get our little green men here.
Yeah.
I think this is it to my point about I think the most influential part of Close Encounters of the Third Kind is just its overall vibes and its overall like visual language and visual design. This is a movie that I think really plants the little green man in the public conscious. It existed before this movie.
Yeah.
Like Close Encounters itself is interpolating the little green man from like, I don't know, like the Barney and Betty Hill books that exist. I feel like that's the first place some of this comes up. But like, yeah, Close Encounters I think is really like, it's such a strong view of grays with flying saucer spaceships.
Yeah.
I love that the spaceships also have like a Decotora thing going on. If you're not familiar, Decotora is like it was like a Japanese practice in like the 80s and 90s, probably also the 70s because Spielberg is clearly playing off of it. But basically, semi-truck drivers would maybe still do. I think this is like vaguely an illegal practice, but basically, truck drivers would deck out their trucks with like neon lights and stuff. The other like popular image of this is the three cars in the Pixar film Cars.
Yeah.
Yo DJ, we got ourselves a nodder. Those guys are very much, they're not semi trucks, but they're like decked out in the Decotora style. They got the neons, they got the like clashing big patterns, and they look like a dazzling sparkling light on the road.
Yeah.
And that's clear to me as like a visual inspiration for the ILM team that made all of those flying saucers.
Yeah, definitely. The flying saucers are just so fascinating. We can talk about that more when we get into the spaceship.
Yeah.
But
or we can just combine the two our next bullet point is talking about the spaceships, but honestly I think talking about the spaceships and the aliens at once is kind of natural.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about the Close Encounters spaceships is going back to 1977 being a big year for sci-fi and Star Wars coming out that year. There's two visions of what science fiction can look like in the sort of like gleaming, glowy, bright light of Close Encounters versus the very industrial look of Star Wars.
Yeah.
I think it's like two visions. I don't necessarily think they're competing, but they're just like divergences in like what science fiction looks like.
Yeah.
In this very real way. That I find really compelling, and I'm such a fucking sucker for Star Wars. I've said this before. And the big thing that I love about those movies is just like how lived in the world feels. But the Close Encounters just like this gleaming bright. It's so optimistic.
Yeah.
And like visually optimistic in a really cool way that I find really refreshing, because I feel like that sort of strain hasn't come back fully.
Yeah.
I think maybe the best place that I can like point to it is like newer Star Trek kind of has that very like bright, glowy look to it. But in those,
are you talking like Chris Pine Star Trek or
like Chris Pine Star Trek
or Discovery's the one that's like more recent.
Discovery, like everything that they've been doing since like post J.J. Abrams Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I think J.J. Abrams Star Trek kind of got the ball rolling just because of all the lens flares and how like
There's
overly
so
bright.
much lens flare in those movies.
Yeah, it's like it's a meme, but it's also not a meme when you watch those.
Yeah.
And it's like those kind of got the ball rolling on the very like overly bright look of contemporary Star Trek. But I think that's carried through to today, and that is something that I find there's probably a through line there of it's drawing from like the Close Encounters look on some level.
Yeah, well, and I think the Close Encounters look also like really carries over into a lot of the other sci-fi pieces that Spielberg did, notably like I think E.T. I think like E.T. the spaceship is a little bit more cartoony, but it feels very in line with Close Encounters.
Yes.
I love that, knowing that like the prop design for this movie, as well as Star Wars, as well as I would imagine E.T., that all of this is being done by Industrial Light and Magic is like, I think it's cool that they were able to sort of, despite working on these films both at the same time, they were able to create these props that are very distinct to their franchises, and yet still you can look at it with the trained eye and be like, oh, that's the Universal Greeble. Oh, that's R2D2. And I think the prop design in Close Encounters is like incredible for that. I think what I have to say about like the alien spaceships in Close Encounters is just that like you can see the hand of very skilled craftspeople.
Yeah, absolutely.
More than it has anything to say about like the aliens themselves, because I think the aliens we're characterizing here are just like the most rarefied example of the pop culture gray.
Yes, absolutely. In a lot of ways, it's kind of the origin of the pop culture gray. I think in a lot of ways, and it continues through all of Spielberg's depictions of aliens. I feel maybe not in War of the Worlds, but definitely in Disclosure Day.
Yeah.
Not to like.
Are they grays? Are there grays in Disclosure Day?
They're grays, and they're fucking weird grays.
Oh, fun.
They're not like really weird. They just, you know, the John Lennon like walking meme where he's like, whoa. They walk like that.
I love that.
And that's the unique thing about these grays, and they fly Doritos. Glowing
the TB3.
Doritos. The TB3?
The TB3. Oh, so this was I mentioned this in I think the bonus episode. I started to watch another like UFO doc about this this fictive craft called the TB3. It gets attributed to like anytime someone sees a triangle UFO. Mm-hmm. The TB3 is not itself a UFO. It is a conspiracy theoried craft that basically the idea is that the US government having UFOs from like the Roswell crash or the Aztec crash or like whatever you might think. The idea that they were reverse engineered an alien spaceship and built one and like this top secret like training UFO that they were using is called the TB3. It's horseshit. It's fake. We would know about this if it existed.
Yeah.
Also, there are real triangular aircraft. It's called the B-2.
Yep.
I think some of this also comes from the Phoenix Lights, which are another kind of nothing burger of a UFO incident where a bunch of A-10 Warthogs flying in formation over Arizona, New Mexico, scared a bunch of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the TB3, that's my potted summary of the TB3. I guess that's my tinfoil segment for this episode. I didn't plan a tinfoil episode. I didn't plan a tinfoil segment, but I guess you're just getting the scraps, the scrapings of like other stuff I couldn't really discuss elsewhere. The other thing I have here is also in the 2023 UAP hearing, Ryan Graves outlines supposedly at Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is it's the place that they launch rockets from it. It's out on the West Coast, like north of LA. It might also be north of Santa Barbara. But Ryan Graves in that hearing outlined an incident at Vandenberg Air Force Base where a bunch of Boeing contractors reportedly saw a giant red like football field sized square rise up out of the ocean and like hover low over, like just moved really low and slow over the Air Force Base. And then apparently later that night it like came back and did the same thing. And there's like I found online, I'll link this, where like I found a blog post by like the person that Graves is quoting in this, like one of the Boeing contractors who supposedly saw this, but otherwise like fucking nothing else about this. Just like the one offhand weird thing that Ryan Graves said during the UAP hearing. One of the more outlandish things said. I think the David Grush, like, I know where the bodies are is like the most
so
outlandish that we get in that
funny.
hearing. But I think Ryan Graves being like, yeah, a big red football field sized object just like hovered over Vandenberg and a bunch of Boeing contractors saw it. Is like, yeah, fuck, dude, shit. Big if true.
Literally, it's a big square.
And apparently there are like also other there are like other reports of like crafts moving like way faster than light that watched like missile launch tests and stuff at Vandenberg. There's a couple of UFO Vandenberg reports. I think once again we fit squarely into our military paranoia.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, also just as we're talking about the aliens, but also spaceships, I want to introduce a term to the podcast, and that's the idea of engineering the vacuum. And that's just, we've talked a couple of times about the Alcubierre drive, which is like this theoretical faster than light travel method that where you directly warp space-time, and it gives you kind of like a universal cheat code that lets you move faster than the speed of light without actually moving faster than the speed of light. Your pod is stationary and space-time is warping around you, sort of. And that warping of space-time, there's like a term for that, and it's engineering the vacuum. And so I just want to introduce that into the lexicon, because I'll probably bring it up more as we talk about spaceships in these movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that term a lot.
Yeah. Before I got into tinfoil, what we were talking about Close Encounters.
We were talking about Close Encounters. Do we have more to say about it?
I think I will contrast Close Encounters with I think the polar opposite of alien spacecraft in these, which is the shells from Arrival.
Yeah.
It's just a big slate cowrie shell.
Yeah.
It's cool as fuck.
It is. They're so fucking sick.
I love that it's like this, it is this thing that almost looks like magic. I love that Arrival, as it plays with science, it's really easy to like imagine science fiction and imagine dials and knobs and greebles and large rectangular metal boxes. Close Encounters does this both with the alien crafts, but also just like presenting the pinnacles of human technology at that time by having like, 5 different synthesizers in it, one of which was like an ARP 5200 that they broke. Or sorry, it was a 2500, and they did break it. But anyways, like, whereas Close Encounters, and I think also to an extent Contact, are really presenting our like metal box image of technology. Arrival really plays with this idea that like technology can itself be knowledge. And I love the ways in which like the hard technology analyses of Arrival really don't have anything to do with machines.
Yeah.
This gets a little bit into an essay that Ursula K. Le Guin wrote called The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction. Basically just talking about how, like, we never think of, like, the textile arts as being technology, but they are. Like, one of the earliest computing devices is the Jacquard loom, which is a textiles device. We don't think of textiles as being technology. We don't think of language as being technology. We don't think of all of these non-machine items we don't really think of as being technology, but they are.
Yeah.
And Arrival is really uniquely engaged with that.
Definitely.
I feel. It's like the language is a technology.
Yes.
The heptapods seem to have some mechanism of engineering the vacuum, but because we've like drawn time perception into this, you have to wonder, like, do the heptapods actually have really advanced machinery that allows them to like move through thin air, or is it the theory I presented earlier in the episode where it's like, what if they just experience a different 3 dimensions from us, And so them disappearing into thin air actually just looks like them moving in the T direction.
Yeah, yeah. It it is an interesting thing to contemplate. I like what you say about like how engaged Arrival is with like the variety of technology and how deep the idea of technology actually goes beyond just like the machines that we use every day. And I think the fact that it's so naturalistic directly challenges that.
Yeah.
And it looks like Slate, and I think that is kind of the inviting the audience to engage with the idea that like technology is not entirely what we conceptualize it. It's grander than that. It can look different from that.
Yeah.
And I really love the way that it just sort of turns into mist and, like you said, moving in the T axis.
Yeah.
It's so, I don't know how I square the fact that they move that way with the rest of the circular like symbolism of everything about that movie.
Yeah.
In the way that like, how does, I guess my question in response to you bringing that up is like, how do you view that in relation to a lot of like the symbolism and meaning placed in like the circularity of the heptapods and the forwards and back that they experience?
Yeah.
How does the way that they move relate to that in your mind?
I mean, if we want to like talk about the theme of like circularity within the film, I think it's very astute that the ships rotate up and away.
Yeah.
I think that's just like, maybe that's an intentional detail, maybe not. This is honestly an idea that I'm like pulling out of my ass just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think the idea of like time versus space just being a perceptual difference is like really, really cool.
Yeah.
But I maybe providing a like, I could see it being a situation, speculation hat fully on.
Yeah.
I could see it being a situation where it's like, oh yeah, you experience X, Y, and T as your space dimensions, and you're experiencing like the Z axis up and down as your time axis. Like, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what that would look like, but you're still like, it's just that you're experiencing time, you're just moving through time as though you were walking across a room.
Yeah. I relating to that, I think the thing that just came to mind for me was that because of the circularity of the heptapods and the fact that they like exist forwards and back in time, and the interesting thing is that because they can see into the future and the past, they kind of exist at all moments. And I think in the same way the ship does,
Yeah.
where it's like it's always been here.
Yeah.
And so they're just kind of going to the moment when it's here.
Yeah, they're just going to the moment when it's here. Well, and like if you think about, there's I think like probably one of the better like layman primers to thinking about the fourth dimension. The YouTuber and math educator Matt Parker has a book called Things to Make and Do in the Fourth Dimension. That's all about like trying to understand best we can how to perceive four-dimensional space. And he's specifically talking about 4 spatial dimensions, not 3 in one time, or even like 3 different spatial dimensions in one time. I'm thinking about this idea that like, okay, if you were to drop a 4-dimensional sphere into our 3-dimensional reality, you would watch a small sphere materialize in the middle of the room, get bigger, get smaller, and then like phase out of existence, because it's a 4-dimensional sphere falling through our 3-dimensional space.
Yeah.
And so all we actually see, it doesn't look like it's moving through our 3-dimensional space, because in all 3 of our directions it is still, so it's just like hovering in place for us. But in the same way that if you dropped a 3-dimensional sphere through 2-dimensional space, they would get small circular slices, and then bigger circular slices, and then small circular slices again. You're at every point in time you are getting a 2-dimensional projection of the 3-dimensional objects passing through space.
Okay.
In the same way, if you were to drop a 4-dimensional sphere through 3-dimensional space, you would get a series of 3-dimensional snapshots of the 4-dimensional object. And so if the heptapods are four spatial dimension beings, or even if the heptapods experience a different three spatial dimensions than us.
Mm-hmm.
And if for them moving through time is like walking across a room, if the ship moves in the T direction and not X, Y, or I mean, I guess it's always moving through the Z axis. If the ship moves in the T axis and no other axis, it does look like it's just fading into nothing.
Yeah.
And so that like there's some, I don't think that this is a thing that the text necessarily supports, but with my understanding of like math, I think it's a cool idea to entertain here.
Yeah, definitely. That's another not tinfoil segment, but a scientific segment that I just
Definitely
really enjoyed.
harebrained.
Yeah.
Definitely my I've been thinking about grad school recently. I think I want to go back to grad school for a STEM subject.
Yeah.
I think I don't like being around engineers enough to want to study engineering. I feel like a lot of engineers, you learn the engineering worldview, and I watch it turn people like profoundly incurious in every other capacity, because they're like, oh, engineering has given me the tools to understand literally everything. And it's like, no, engineering has given you the tools to understand engineering problems.
Yeah.
And so, you've probably, I would venture to get you, my partner, and also you, the listener, have probably met an engineer, usually a computer scientist, who like thinks that they can solve every problem in the world with code or with like engineering solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And those people tend to not have very good things to say about the humanities, because it's like not even a like, you can think that the humanities are important, but because you are trying to approach them from an engineering background and not willing to let go of the fact that your engineering knowledge won't help you here,
Yeah.
you get a lot of people who it really funnels people into the into this Marvel brain paradigm of consuming media.
Yeah. And it also leads to all of the tech corporations that are increasingly ruling the world.
Oh my god, yeah.
And those are they're same thing, different scales.
Well, and some of the reason that the engineering mindset leads here isn't necessarily that like engineering is bad and we shouldn't do it. It's because engineering in the way that it exists in our society serves capital. And so any kind of thought that challenges capital is not taught in engineering schools.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you know too much about what it's like to live in an occupied country, you are going to think twice about working somewhere that makes bombs.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, I've been thinking about grad school, and I think I want to study like maybe math or physics or chemistry, or like some like harder discipline, at least a little bit, so that I can talk less out of my ass when I get into science discussion. I think I'm headed towards math. I feel math people seem like my people. People who are like really excited about math, especially like non-applied math, seem to be the STEM discipline closest to like an artist.
Yeah, I think
a lot of mathematicians are artists in a lot of ways.
Yeah, in high school, I had a teacher, my AP Calc teacher. I believe he taught at Brown, like he taught mathematics at Brown. He had a doctorate, and he stopped teaching there because he didn't want to have to publish anymore.
So
he was like, "I'm gonna go become a high school teacher," and he was my favorite math teacher ever. I think the thing that you just said about being the closest to an artist, I think. His temperament really reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Now that you point that out,
mathematicians are so curious about the world.
Yeah, he was a lovely guy. I really miss him. He was great. I wish I had spent more time with him in my high school. Just like he had gotten there earlier so that I could take more classes with him. But mathematicians, the people who really go hard on math, I think are. In my experience, they've been very lovely people. My aunt has a master's in mathematics, if I remember correctly,
Nice.
and she's also great. And yeah,
love
masters in math would be cool.
Yeah,
that's my saying on it. Do we want to get back to the
off of our three sidebars deep?
Yeah.
So I think we're talking about how the aliens in these movies are characterized. We've talked at length about Close Encounters and Arrival,
and also Contact,
and
Yeah.
and Contact. I think, yeah.
I think. Sorry, you go ahead.
I think it's interesting in Contact how they make us build the spaceship.
Yeah.
I think that's like an interesting. I think like one of the big themes of Contact is like, what if we were able to actually mobilize all of humanity towards one big science project?
Yeah.
It's a really great idea. Wish we could do that about climate change.
Yes.
Sitting in my 80-degree recording studio.
Yeah.
Get on it. Get on it. I'd make the world cool. Dump the ice cube in the ocean. I don't care.
Fix it now.
Fix it. Stop. Turn off the coal power plants and the gas power plants.
Literally. A better world is possible.
A better world is possible, but sooner rather than later.
Yes, please. If I may, can I jump to Signs?
Yes. Let's jump to Signs.
I don't think I have a ton to say about Signs because it's kind of the most boring in this regard.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's not. This is not the thing that it's interested in.
The aliens are a narrative boogeyman.
Yes, and the big thing, the thing that I think is fun to point out about these is that the aliens have chameleon skin, and we never see the ships. They're just cloaked.
We see like lights over Mexico City. That's it.
Yeah, but during the day they're cloaked and invisible, and I think that is
and killing pigeons.
Yes, unfortunately, not to laugh about that. I love pigeons.
Pigeons are cool.
Pigeons are very cool. But I think it's like a fun thing where it's like we don't want to fucking design the ship. We don't want to show what it looks like.
Yeah,
that's a little bit what it feels like. But it's also like it's a weird thing where like the alien species can change color and like morph, and so therefore their ship can also do the same thing, which I find really interesting. But I guess that's something that Arrival also, like if our theory of like the ship being like fourth dimensional and it's sort of just like traveling in time to the point that it was at like on Earth rather than actually like traveling through space. Those are like similar things, where the ship reflects the people who created it in a very literal and like almost biological way, like they're extensions of them.
Yeah,
which I find compelling and something that hasn't been fully explored in a science fiction movie, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
But I think that would be cool.
Yeah,
that's what I have to say about Signs.
Yeah, no, I think the like. Signs really characterizes its aliens and their technology by not saying much. And I think it succeeds in that way. I think if Signs was really trying to characterize its aliens as more than just like this shadowy boogeyman that we know not much about other than that they're trying to hurt us.
Yeah.
I think you'd have a very different movie, and maybe a movie that isn't standing on its thesis as well. I think the fact that Signs is really playing in this fear of the unknown and is even directly engaging with like what we would expect aliens to be like through the book by Dr. Bimbo. Like I think Signs is really taking a less is more approach to the way that it characterizes aliens. And while I maybe have some issues with like the bad CGI and some of the sound design, which maybe isn't technically bad, but feels weird. I do think narratively that less is more approach really works. I really like the way that like we don't get a super clear shot of the alien until 3 minutes left in the film.
Yeah, it's good. It shows a level of restraint, and I think it's also it's the movie acknowledging that it knows what it's actually about, because it's about the people and not the aliens.
Yeah, it's a theme that, and I think this gets us right into our last double bullet point that we're going to address both of these at once, of the TV, and I have a visual gag. I'm going to hand you these.
Okay. So should I describe what I've been?
Yeah, describe what you've been handed.
I've been handed
no brands.
Okay, I won't brand it. But what looks like the top of a coffee cup. And
it just the first thing I had to put some stuff in.
Yeah, I have been given a D20, a D12, a D8, a D4, and a D6. So polyhedral dice for those who don't play TTRPGs.
What's better than this? Couple of platonic friends, a couple of platonic solids, and a couple of platonic themes. We're talking about Plato's allegory of the cave. We're talking about Plato's allegory of the cave, and secondarily, nested subject, the TV, which is a character in all of these films.
Yes.
Although the TV is not always being the cave.
May I-
Sometimes the TV is the cave.
Sometimes the TV is a cave. Can I? Speaking of caves,
Yes.
you really had to guide me through the dark to reach the end of that bit. I was groping at the cave wall, and you were telling me get over here so I can land this punchline.
Sorry.
No. It's good. It's good. A visual gag on a podcast always goes well.
A visual gag on a podcast without visuals.
Yeah.
We got the audio description in there.
Classic thing to do.
Classic.
Take it away on the television.
Play-Doh. Okay, so first off, the TV is a character in every single one of these films, and the TV is kind of serving a different purpose in every one of these films. I think Signs and Arrival are maybe the two that are most mirrored. Even then, I digress. So, Contact, I feel like the TV's presence as a plot device is really there to ground us in the real physical world of 1997.
Mm-hmm.
To the extent that, this movie is really going towards that, like, we are in our universe. Bill Clinton is the sitting president. Sometimes there are a few scenes, like the scene where they're at the White House, where the diegetic scene is TV. Mm-hmm. Where I think also like some of the like interview scenes were meant to believe that like the plot happens on TV sometimes, and I think the TV and Contact is really here to just like show us like, we are grounded in our real world. You are watching CNN with all of the anchors from CNN.
Yeah.
And it's really meant to be like, what if this happened to us?
Yeah.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
On Contact.
Sorry,
yes. All good. I think the other interesting thing is that because the hyper-reality of television and like the broadcast is so important to Contact's plot, I think it mirrors the importance of like the actual broadcast from Vega.
Yeah.
Where it's like in the same way that like this like verifiably true information, overall the movie has a very like deep interest in broadcasting. Like that's how the TV broadcasts are how we get to the Vegans, and then they broadcast the signal back to us, and then we are watching broadcast TV throughout the film, and sort of absorbing the world through that lens. And I think there is an interesting thing to say about that being like there is like a language of truth that, because it is this like very scientific medium, at the end of the day, it denotes a level of truth that wouldn't be there otherwise.
Yeah.
Which is, I find very interesting.
I think that's interesting also just like with the, like we're product placing a specific news organization.
Yeah.
I think that really goes hand in hand where like, we've characterized CNN as the voice of truth, which is a very end of history viewpoint to be taking.
Yeah.
That's a viewpoint that really precedes everything that's happened in the last 10, 15 years.
Definitely.
But in contrast to Contact, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I feel like more utilizes the TV as like it's cultural reference. Like, we get references to Looney Tunes, we get references to Days of Our Lives, which are like TV shows that the audience would recognize.
Right.
I feel like the TV in Close Encounters is really a vehicle for exploring inner dialogue. Mm-hmm. It's a way of exploring inner dialogue without having us look at Roy and then like hear an echoey voice in his head.
Yeah.
Instead, we just like see the TV exploring the thing that he is feeling, which I think is like artful. I think that's slick. I like it.
Yes, I really enjoy that. I think it's a good approach, and I think honestly Close Encounters has like the most interesting use of television in it, because it is so, I don't want to say symbolic, but like it is playing a lot more in like a looser narrative influence than the very literal television broadcasts that are in Contact, Signs, and Arrival, because those broadcasts are relaying if not like direct truths about the world, because like in Arrival, obviously a lot of the news broadcasts, like I'm thinking about like the Alex Jones
Yeah.
style character, the Rush Limbaugh.
In Arrival, we get a lot of nods to like contemporary news media not being very reliable.
Right. And I think the interesting thing about Close Encounters is that it kind of forgoes the news as like the thing that it's interested in.
Yeah.
Because it's so focused on Roy's perspective in that regard. And I think that's just like an interesting narrative, like
I think
it's a narrative. It's an interesting narrative element, and I think the thing that it kind of betrays is that Close Encounters isn't very interested in any of the science.
Yeah,
and
it's interested in the vibes of science.
Yes, and it's also I think because like Spielberg's fingerprints are all over it, and as like a very like as a storyteller, I feel like that is kind of like one of those things where it's like it's the thing that I want the TV there for is the cultural, the storytelling aspect rather than like relaying information. Whereas like Arrival and Contact are movies very interested in knowledge, and the news broadcasts are the relation of knowledge to the audience.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into the way that both Signs and Arrival deal with the TV, which is a lot more in line with Plato's allegory of the cave, I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like especially Signs. Signs, I thought so much about Plato's allegory of the cave during Signs. I think not least because like every shot where we see the TV, someone saying what you're watching is real.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, that there is one line of that sort in Arrival, but I just think the fact that it keeps getting repeated in Signs was really stuck out to me.
Yeah.
And really made me think, like, is it what it is? Is it actually what it is? Which is the essence of Plato's allegory of the cave. For those unfamiliar, I hope everyone's familiar with Plato's allegory of the cave, but I'm not going to judge you if you aren't. The idea of it, in summary, is Plato wrote down a conversation between Socrates and
his brother.
His brother.
Yeah.
Who I don't remember
Plato's brother.
Plato's brother, who I don't remember the name of.
Yeah, neither do I.
But Socrates is waxing poetic, as he liked to do. Socrates is waxing poetic about, like, imagine, like, prisoners who have been kept in a cave their entire life. They're chained to their spot, and they can't turn their heads behind the wall that they're sitting up against. There is like a fire or a light of some sort coming into the cave, and there are people behind the prisoners who are like shining shadows onto the cave wall. And because these prisoners literally know nothing else but their position right here in the cave, to them, the figures on the cave wall and any sounds ascribed to the figures on the cave wall might as well be real.
Right.
And the only way to discover that they are merely shadows is to escape those binds. And this is like, to Socrates and Plato, this is a metaphor about like introspective philosophy and about how like you need to engage in order to like understand the true nature of things. You need to engage them on a philosophical level, on like a deductive reasoning level.
Yeah.
You know, getting into all of that very important philosophy they invented.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like Signs is dealing with the allegory of the cave very directly through the TV because, like, you know, as I've mentioned, we only get like these short glimpses of the aliens through the film. And I think if you know anything about the storytelling of M. Night Shyamalan, his like thing is that he loves a plot twist. And so I do think first watch, you spend a lot of the movie, it almost feels like this red herring that we're going to find out that it like really was a hoax, and that like you know, somehow like maybe the world did just get like whipped up into a frenzy or something.
Yeah.
That really feels like a possible outcome when we're being told so strongly by the text that like what you're seeing is on TV is real. What you're seeing on TV is real.
Yeah.
And it almost creates this expectation of like, I don't like how much you're trying to affirm this to me. Makes it seem like it's not true. And I feel like Signs is just like really playing in this space where it's like it is so much about the unknown and so much about like extrapolating from quite literally a shadow that you saw on the roof of the farm of the barn, Yeah, I feel like Signs, I talked about this in the whole episode, but I feel like Signs is so directly engaged with the allegory of the cave through the TV, through these like shadowy figures of the aliens that we see, and we don't exit the cave until quite literally everybody comes out of the basement and there's an alien sitting there in the living room.
Yeah.
And we don't, and our first shot of that alien is reflected in the TV.
Yes. Yeah.
As well as our last shot of the alien is reflected in the TV.
It's very good in that regard.
Yeah.
Excellent film.
And then Arrival's like also, Arrival is in dialogue with the way that Signs handles the TV. Arrival's not using the TV in the same way, but it's definitely in communication with what Signs is doing.
Yeah.
I think especially like this is a very like front-loaded theme in the movie. Louise Banks turning on the TV to the announcer being like, "What you're seeing is real," which I think is a very like clear nod to Signs. But then also, as we talked about, like how later in the film, I think it's interesting that just like because of the temporality of this movie, the time frame of this movie, not necessarily the way the movie deals with time. The time frame of this movie is such that like we are engaged with like the sort of mezzo TV that exists now through the internet. Like content that exists only on the internet has never been broadcast, is not beholden to broadcast standards, but for all intents and purposes is TV, a web show.
Yeah.
Alex Jones is a web show.
Yeah.
And so like where like Arrival expands on this idea of like everybody is speculating through the TV. Most of what we hear through the TV is like people seeing the shadow on the cave wall and being like, "That's a guy. That's I think I know what I'm seeing because of what I have seen in the media." And Dr. Banks has to be like, "Mom, stop watching that news channel."
Right.
Dr. Banks is almost like is very aware of the way in which media gets manipulated to whip people up into a frenzy and is like resisting it. But the people around her aren't necessarily. And so, you know, like this power of TV to present false narratives and to sensationalize and extrapolate is like explored as like an antagonistic force in the plot in a way that I think is really cool, and in a way that is like really prescient to reality. It's almost like we were going through some shit in 2016.
That kind of informs what it's like today.
Yeah.
Yeah. One might say so. But yeah, speaking to that, I think the Arrival and Signs are definitely in conversation with each other because, like you said, Dr. Banks is like rationalizing everything and is doing a good job of handling the truth, the quote unquote truth that is on like television.
She's looking for the mundane explanation everywhere.
Yeah, whereas Signs is about these, and she is like a well-educated person who teaches at a university versus the people, the family in Signs who are kind of getting whipped into a frenzy by the television, and they are rural and from a preacher family.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting dichotomy there. And yeah, the television, the omnipresence of television in First Contact movies, like it's one of those things where I didn't necessarily conceptualize them as being really like TV, like television movies.
Yeah, I didn't think that this was going to be our recurring character.
Yeah, but it makes perfect sense because it is for. Arrival is right on the border of this, and arguably is kind of like post the internet replacing TV in this regard. But like when something big breaks, when something like earth shattering happens, you would find out on TV during the period like from like the late 70s onwards. Like the late 70s, this is post like the Vietnam War being broadcast into every single living room in America, and so the dissemination of this information that is so world shattering, it makes sense that like the TV is constantly on and there. And yeah, I think your exploration of television through like the allegory of the cave is very prescient because there is the TV is the cave wall, and we are being fed a filter of reality because the camera is not omniscient. And I think that's an important thing to remember. And that the
camera has a viewpoint because the camera is being operated by a person.
Yes, exactly. And I think that is like a really interesting thing that these movies engage with that I really love.
Yeah. And I even think, where Contact and Close Encounters aren't using the TV as the cave wall, they're definitely still engaging with the walls of the cave.
Yeah.
I think like the 18 hours of static bit in Contact is like a real choice moment there. Like we have no evidence of this fantastical thing that she claims except for this weird inexplicable absence of a thing.
Yeah.
Which I just think is interesting. Maybe that's not the most like direct metaphor to Plato's allegory of the cave, but I still think it's like playing in that space somewhat.
Absolutely.
It's playing in the space of belief and faith and like, can you really believe what you saw? And same with Close Encounters. I think the theme of like Roy's descent into madness, until his wife is like, we need to go to family therapy because you're sitting in the shower and it's red in here. I hate to be in the shower and it's just red.
I hate when my shower is red, man.
Yeah, fuck, dude. But no, I think like Roy's descent into madness like really is also playing in this space where it's like, can you believe the thing that you saw? This fantastical thing that you saw that no one will believe you about.
Yeah.
Are like, can you? You come to a point where you're starting to wonder if you can even believe yourself. And I think that's definitely. I think those are interesting connections to be had. That like each of these movies, because each of these movies is ultimately playing on belief. It's playing on belief in the extraterrestrial. It's often playing on belief in higher power. And Plato's allegory of the cave itself is also kind of about belief and about knowledge and about like, it's not only like when you've only ever seen the inside of the cave, shadows on the wall will look like the real thing to you. If you spent your entire life in the cave, you don't even have the tools to understand that there is an outside of the cave.
Yeah.
And so there's like, there's those two layers to it where I just think like inevitably every single one of these pieces is engaging with it in its own way, because this is a genre that is at its core about the unknown.
Yes, exactly. And I think the other thing about the allegory of the cave is that like it's inviting you to doubt what you see and understand.
Yeah.
And the inverse of faith is doubt.
Yeah.
And that because these movies are so about faith at the end of the day, that it also means that they are about doubting, and have different conceptions of whether or not doubt is like a virtuous thing.
Yeah.
I think, I think that at the end of the day, I think Contact kind of has like no, because all of these movies believe in like believing in the thing very deeply. And there is like a level that like doubt is kind of, and like skepticism is kind of antagonistic to what these movies are about, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, but I think like, the difference between, Contact, where like all of the scientists are very skeptical, and they spend, I think about that whole scene that they spend like where Airway is like, make me a liar fish. And they like run through, they're like, okay, it could be this, and this.
Yeah.
And it's none of those things. And they're like, well, shit, we did our due diligence. Maybe this is the real deal. Versus the way that Signs, for example, handles doubt, which is every single time Graham tries to come up with a rational explanation for what's going on, he is proven extremely wrong.
Yeah.
Every time Graham tries to be like, oh, it's just static, we start hearing like voice noises. Every time Graham is like, oh, well, maybe it's Lionel Pritchard and the Wolfington brothers, it's like, well, no, it wasn't. They were somewhere else and they have an alibi.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's like each of these movies is like playing on doubt in their own unique ways, which is, I find it interesting that you bring that up, because like it's where the inverse of faith exists.
Yeah, when a piece of art is engaged in a specific theme very deeply, I think it helps to look at the inverse of that like ideal and thing, and it gives you a little bit more insight.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So with that, I want to get into our synthesis. What do we think First Contact movies are about? Like, just broadly, like all these movies that we've watched, what is, when we tell alien First Contact stories, what the fuck are we talking about? Why do we care? Why is this a story that we are so interested in telling over and over and over?
I'm going to think on this for a moment.
Feel free.
Figure out. We can cut as much silence as we need to from the episode. I mean, for me, the thing that it really comes back to, or one of the main things, it's colonial fears.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, for me, I think, especially because the movies that we have been watching are made in the U.S. Or they're made in the U.S. or Canada, like the global Western like lens, we'll say. And these are the powers that are predominantly like the colonizing powers of history. And so the idea of another species coming to our planet and they have like technological superiority, or they're beginning to influence our world, it plays on this like colonial anxiety of these are like new people and they have this advantage over us, and where does that leave us? Where do we shake out in like the power hierarchy now, and are we in danger? And I think these movies kind of, in their own way, play with that. And I think primarily I think these movies are interested in like trying to push past that. And trying to say like these anxieties come up, but we do not need to be afraid.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great read, and I think that like, yeah, each of these movies is like playing with colonial military apparatus, paranoia, and like, I think it's interesting because Close Encounters, Contact, Arrival are all very much playing with like the fears of the seat of power.
Yeah.
It's playing with, the thing that Kitz is afraid of is the aliens usurping American power. The thing that Colonel Weber is afraid of is either the aliens usurping American power or the aliens giving China the ability to usurp American power.
Yeah.
And Close Encounters of the Third Kind is like less concerned with like the usurping of American exceptionalism, but is definitely concerned with like, we can't let the people know about this.
Yeah.
We have to keep this like a closely guarded secret because the knowledge of extraterrestrials might usurp American power.
Yeah.
Signs stands alone here in that Signs really presents this story where you, the viewer, understand that nobody is coming to save them.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, even as it has its thesis about like, well, someone must have been looking out for Merrill because his lungs were closed, the poison didn't get in. I still think it's Signs is so unique to me in this arc in how it like really is not nearly as interested in like state politics, in geopolitics, as the rest of these films.
Yeah.
And I think it's really powerful in that. I think it's like I think the further on in this episode I get, I feel like the more I'm softening on Signs, but I do think it like
yes.
it really you're turning me.
I'm the fucking sicko in the window. Everybody will like
we're
Signs.
gonna do the same thing next week with Landscape.
I really hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so.
But no, I think like it's a really powerful piece in how the power struggle explored in that movie isn't one of like a state against an unknown. It is one of a family against an unknown.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for me, like, colonial fears aside, which they're absolutely present. And I think like talking about the colonial fears of alien media was one of the things that made me want to start this podcast, as I was like, oh, this is like a rich tableau of like what we fear and are afraid to talk about. Because I think that is like a big thing, is like a lot of art is a way of navigating themes that we're uncomfortable talking about directly.
Yeah.
A lot of people are uncomfortable talking about their colonial fears directly, either because like actual historical colonialism is like often like way too gut-wrenching to talk about and think about. It's like, even setting aside like being like jokey or being sober or what have you, like it is difficult to talk about historical human atrocity, because with every word you recognize that this is a real thing that happened to real people.
Yeah.
Media gives us this lens to step outside of our real and grotesque and like very emotionally charged reality and into this space where we can explore those themes a little bit more. We can explore like, how would America react to being colonized through the lens of like an alien power that's just so much more powerful than us. We can think about like how the world could enter a post-colonial period through the aid of alien technology and them kind of forcing us all to work together.
Yeah.
It's this format that really allows for like those explorations without necessarily having to deal with like the profoundly tragic history involved with talking about like actual colonialism, with talking about a piece like with talking about like actual historical colonialism, like what the British East India Company continues to do. The British East India Company still exists. They just operate under a different name.
Yeah.
There's I think it's Twinings tea. I'll just cut this bit out if it's not them. I'm also not bleeping them because you should know their name. Don't buy Twinings tea. They quite literally are the extension of the British East India Company.
Yeah. I think I definitely agree that like part of art is to help us parse the real world and explore like the emotions and feelings and the things going on. And I don't know, the thing that while you were talking about that is like, I love that like these pieces of art allow us to engage with these ideas in like what feels like a safer environment. But I also wish, man, could people just like be confronted with the reality of colonialism more?
Oh my God, yeah.
I think it is a hand in hand thing where you need both.
Yeah.
Because like one is the reality and the other is to help you parse the reality.
Yeah.
And I think in our environment we're missing people actually engaging with the reality enough.
Oh my God, yeah. No, we are. I totally agree, and I think where I'm coming at this, I don't.
That's not me saying that like you were saying otherwise.
And I don't think that you were
Yeah.
supposing that I'm saying that like alien movies are good because they allow us to ignore history.
Yeah.
No, I think alien movies. I think there is a real power in giving somebody that stepping stone into understanding a historical context better.
Definitely.
It doesn't, watching a bunch of alien movies does not replace learning about colonization and the bloody, bloody history therein. It's a lot easier to like sell somebody on, watch this alien movie that you don't necessarily expect to have colonial themes.
Mm-hmm.
It's media that has strong things to say. I feel like it often is most effective when it kind of lures you in with something else.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Like where I'm luring you in with an interesting plot, and herein I'm interspersing, this conversation about like British colonialism, about like, I think that's like, and I think that's a powerful thing that like each of these movies is doing in their own way, is just thinking about like, especially Contact and Arrival are both like so thoroughly in this space of like, what if we were the nail?
Yeah. We're a society of hammers.
We're a society of hammers. America is a society of hammers. We are the most militarized society in history. We're the most imprisoned society in history. I think something like 100 million people at least have been killed by the U.S. military since World War II, in all of our very unjust conflicts therein. It's awful. America's a failed state. Put something else up.
Literally. Ah! Any other thing that you think these movies are about, or first contact stories in general are about?
Yeah, I think therein, as we deal with like the horrible quagmire of colonialism, I think each of these movies in their own way does present this desire for social unity.
Yeah.
This desire to be able to engage with each other harmoniously, to be able to conduct first contact in a way that isn't bloody for one or both sides. Maybe I'm just thinking about this because I've been watching a lot of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which Star Trek is like very in this idea of like first contact and like how best to accomplish it.
Yeah, the prime directive is like,
yeah. I think it's a little interesting. I feel like in Contact, humanity is a little bit being prime directived.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
The way of like, this is how it's always been done, and it's been done this way for millions of years, and you just have to trust the process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the Contact definitely has like a prime directive vibe to it.
Yeah, Starfleet started on Vega. But yeah, like I think that's a really, like, you know, it's kind of a sappy overarching theme, but I think it is like an overarching theme that, like, if we are going to move past the bloodshed and destruction of colonialism, we do have to embrace a profound love of each other, a profound love of beings you don't understand immediately.
And a profound trust.
And a profound trust that, like, we all want what's best.
Yeah.
And that what's best is, like, the idea of the non-zero sum game in Arrival threads this so perfectly.
Yeah.
Of, like, yeah, you have to... What if you could trust that everybody had our best interests at heart and we all mutually benefit from it? That's unfortunately not something that occurs very much in history.
Mm-hmm.
Like, unfortunately, the history of, like, civilization first contact is, like, one side gets wiped out.
Yeah.
It's, at least, you know, as it relates to European colonialism, I don't know enough about, like, indigenous histories. There are probably, like, there are probably non-Western societies that have, like, managed first contact that didn't involve, like, genocide.
Yeah.
European civilizations haven't really managed first contact that doesn't involve some genocide.
Yeah, I think it's one of those unfortunate things that, like, the genocides have happened all over the world, especially, like, the further you go back into history. The scarcer resources are, the more likely stuff like that happens. Unfortunately, it is a dark part of human history, but it's part of it.
Yeah, and I think to thread the needle on, like, what our first contact movie's about, I think first contact science fiction, at least these movies that we've explored, are really, I think, about trying to find a better way.
Yeah.
Trying to find a way of first contact that's fruitful for everybody. Trying to find a way of engaging with other creatures that's mutually beneficial for everybody. I feel like if we want to have, like, an optimistic view of what first contact stories are about, it is about, like, how we could move forward from our colonial trap.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally they're optimistic movies.
Yeah.
I think with First Contact, this is something that gets complicated by, like, military first contact. There are two strains of alien movies, and we're definitely talking about the optimistic kind in the series so far.
We'll get into some of the more pessimistic ones in another arc, I feel.
Yeah, I feel like in the upcoming arc, we're definitely we're getting into, like, 4 movies that are pretty universally pessimistic about like what first contact looks like, or like what post contact looks like, which is interesting. But I think the next arc is about post contact, and I think the interesting thing is there is in both ways, they are about colonialism and they discuss colonialism. I think the pre-contact films are the hope that this time it'll be different.
Yeah.
And then the post-contact films, because it's not super interesting to just make you can make an interesting movie about a utopia. I'd probably like to see that.
Yeah.
But the reason that genre exists is because there is conflict in the post-contact world.
Yeah.
And that is like the pessimistic side of it. And
I
it's
mean, I guess Star Trek poses a vaguely utopian post-contact world.
Yes, definitely. But like the movies that we're going to be talking about, the post-contact world is like, it is the pessimistic view, and it's also the view of like, what is it like to be colonized?
Yeah.
For some of these movies, like what is it like to be on the receiving end?
Yeah.
And that is going to be really interesting to look into.
Yeah. The other side of this coin.
Yeah. And before we flip that coin over to the post-contact arc, do we want to go through some questions?
Yeah, we have questions. Thank you, everybody, for submitting questions. I'm sorry that we're recording this before the Arrival episode comes out, so none of you could ask questions about Arrival.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the way the cookie crumbled.
It's the way the cookie crumbled this time. Next arc, we are going to try and record our post-contact synthesis after everything has come out. So get your questions ready for that as the episodes come out. But yeah, let's looking at our first question from Sarah.
How would each of you react if you made first contact? Which is a very broad question, but I'll throw to you first.
I mean, I have autism because I immediately have a question.
Question for two autistic bitches because we need clarifying.
I immediately have another question here, which is like, am I making like very public and verifiable first contact, or am I having a close encounter? You know, if I got like stolen by aliens and they like put a probe up my butt,
not a big fan.
I don't think I would really come back from that. I think I'm already a pretty fragile and traumatized person, and I think that would just break me.
Yeah.
I know that's not like a fun answer.
No.
If I were in like Ellie Airway's position and I like, you know, I think since watching that movie, I've been like flirting with the idea of getting into amateur radio astronomy. It seems cool.
Yeah.
I'm not strong enough. I got a bad knee. I'm not strong enough to get a satellite dish on top of my apartment. C'est la vie. But were I in more of an Ellie Arroway situation, I don't know. I would probably like contact some other close scientist I trust and keep it close to the chest for a minute. I really wouldn't. I get why they went to the media because they like needed their funding, but I feel like I personally would be really scarce about going to the media. I have watched a lot of documentaries I've mentioned Bobby Broccoli previously in this show. Yeah. I think Bobby Broccoli does like really great like science human interest stories. And one theme that he really loves is talking about scientists who went to the media before ever having their like theories peer reviewed. This is what happened with the University of Utah cold fusion debacle is like they went to the press before they ever went to other scientists. And then when people tried to replicate the experiments, it was like, this is nothing. And so like we never would have heard about cold fusion had there not been like a media kerfuffle before it was ever peer reviewed. And then there's also like, you know, more recently there's the LK99 incident where someone was like, look, we made a room temperature superconductor. And before publishing a paper, they like posted a video to Twitter of this like coin-sized object like kind of floating. But then when scientists like did some more looking into it, it became obvious that like this is just a compound that exhibits normal diamagnetism. There are a lot of horror stories of scientists or like amateur scientists going to the public way too quickly before having their shit peer reviewed. And so I think personally I would want to make damn well sure that I am seeing what I think I'm seeing. Yeah.
I think I would want to hang out with the aliens. This is
if you got close encountered.
If I got close encountered, or if I was in, I mean, like Ellie doesn't get to be up close with the aliens. But if I'm making first contact in like some official capacity, or if I'm just getting close encountered, I think the thing that I want is to like hang out with the aliens. Hopefully they've learned English for my sake.
Hopefully they've also learned like basic consent.
Yeah, but I'm hoping we can chill. We can go hit a hot tub. Like we can hang out. We can vibe.
Yeah.
I can show them Earth movies.
I would love to hit the dab with
Exactly.
the dab rig with Costello with Abbott.
Exactly. I think for me it's like
I'm smoking loud pack with the heptapods.
I'm opening up Letterboxd and I'm like, what do you? I'm going to my Letterboxd watch list and I'm saying, what do you want to see with me? We can have a new experience together.
You get abducted by Greys and you show them alien movies. They're like, no. This is about us.
I see that feels like a really bad microaggression. That's like a macroaggression.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You'll like this one. It's about someone like you. No, I'd be like, do you guys want to watch The Big Lebowski? Like,
yeah,
full circle back to the Jeff Bridges.
Having to explain to an alien what a nihilist is.
I have to explain.
He cut his dick off.
We have to explain what Johnson is.
Yeah.
Then I have to pull up Wikipedia and like figure out what the etymology is so I could explain it to them because like I'm not totally sure myself. But yeah, that's probably we're probably watching a cool movie together.
I'm working at a Kinko's. To my best of my French knowledge, stands for like something or other. Like literally, it's like an idiom for something or other.
That makes so much sense because this was a comment on the Podbean,
yeah,
or on the WordPress,
yeah.
And so I feel like that's a classic. Like I need to leave a comment,
yeah.
So I'm making a bullshit account.
Hello, Natalie's. I continue to be entranced by your excellent podcast, and thank you for making it.
Thank you.
I love positive reinforcement. This one inspired me to leave a comment. I hope that this is okay. Here it is. Does Music Theory Natalie have any thoughts about Québécois Sounds of the Summer and Jean de Poitrin? They seem to have committed to the bit of being aliens, and while I hear that they're playing too many notes, it's not that challenging to recognize as human music. How does what they're doing relate to Natalie's ideas about alien harmonic systems, if at all? I think Engine de Poitron is very cool. I think as like microtonal rock goes, behind baseball, microtonal music is like my fucking thing. I did an art residency. I went to Finland and like did some classes, gave some workshops, gave a concert in 8 channels. It's up on YouTube. You can find it.
You can link to it.
Yeah, I can link to it in the description. I love microtonal music. I'm like so enthralled in like non-12 tone temperament systems. Engine is a little bit like, okay, so like if we're going to compare Engine to like the other prominent microtonal rock group, which is like King Gizzard,
which I love.
You like King Gizzard. I'm really not a fan of King Gizzard. I feel like I like Engine because where King Gizzard really gives this impression that they just kind of picked up the guitar one day. Like they picked up this weird microtonal guitar that's not necessarily like in a tuning system so much as it's just got some weird notes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It feels very undisciplined to me. It feels very like I don't get the vibe that King Gizzard has really done their homework in learning microtonal music theory. And that doesn't make it a less valid form of musical expression, but does make it less appealing to me.
Valid.
In contrast, you can really tell that Engine has like studied their 24 tone like system. I'm pretty sure that's what they're using quarter tones. It sounds like quarter tones. I think quarter tones are like a interesting and kind of funny microtonal construct because quarter tones are kind of like the first natural thing you approach in microtonality, which is just like, oh, well, we have the 12-tone equal temperament system. What if you just added a note between every chromatic note and you get 24 tones? I have not heard a piece of 24-tone music that I like really love the harmonies of. I think most 24-tone music sounds just really off. There aren't any like interesting new intervals and harmonies that 24-tone introduces. Maybe the neutral third. I think the neutral third is cool. But all that's to say, I think as like 24-tone stuff goes, Angine de Poitron, very cool. They're not quite, I think, like, some of the best like quarter tonal music is like, if you look at like Arabic and Turkish and North African music that's all based around maqams. Arabic maqams and Turkish maqams are like different in some ways that I'm still learning about. I've been learning a lot about maqams recently, and I don't feel super confident saying anything conclusive, but maqams and Arabic music and North African music, very, very cool. This is Natalie in the edit. I just want to explore this idea maybe a little bit more. So the reason I'm not equating maqams and 24-tone equal temperament, despite them bearing a lot of resemblance to each other and a lot of the maqam language kind of being analogous to quarter tones, I don't want to make a direct comparison between maqams, which are a non-European tonal system, and 24-tone equal temperament, which is born out of European 12-tone equal temperament. I think it's really unfair to compare non-European harmony systems to European harmony. I think it really contributes to the Eurocentrism that is present in a lot of music theory. And so I just want to give maqams their flowers as their own thing that exists outside of the work of Bach and Beethoven. So there's my 2 cents on that. Just wanted to give that context. But I can tell that Engine is like sort of engaging with maqams a little bit. Like they've listened to some of the music coming out of that part of the world.
Yeah.
So I can, I like them in that I can tell that they've at least done some of their homework.
Mm-hmm.
As alien harmonic systems go, I feel like, because it's this problem that comes up anytime you're trying to construct something alien, is that the breadth of human experience is so much wider than you would expect. Yeah, quarter tones, Arabic music, right off the bat, not alien. I'm also guilty of like, I was telling you a little bit earlier, I was in a band called Boggle Crunch. Yes, we were named after a King of the Hill YouTube poop. I was in a band called Boggle Crunch, and part of the internal fiction, it was a 2-piece. I did like electronics and synth stuff, and I had my friend who was playing guitar, and we wanted to create like we wanted to make microtonal music, and we wanted to like create something that sounded like weird and alien. And so we settled on 15-tone equal temperament. We like refretted the guitar with 15-tone equal temperament, and then I had some stuff making my synths all make 15-tone sounds. The 15-tone equal temperament is kind of based around it is a subset of 5-tone equal temperament and this sort of like equidistant pentatonic scale, and that's very prevalent in like Balinese gamelan music.
Mm-hmm.
Balinese gamelan music uses a couple of different scales. Once again, I like don't speak Java or Tagalog or Balinese to like really say anything conclusive. Gamelan music is very, very interesting, and I understand so little about it. But one of the things of gamelan music is that that 5-tone equidistant scale comes up a lot, and so like 15-tone equal temperament, it's like I didn't realize I was borrowing from gamelan music, but I was borrowing from gamelan music. It's really, really hard to construct a harmonic system that bears no resemblance to human harmonic systems.
Yeah.
There is one commonality across human harmonic systems, across non-Western harmonic systems even, more or less. If I'm wrong about this, somebody please correct me, because I would love to be wrong about this. aside from like constructed tuning systems, which is a similar thing to conlangs, a tuning system constructed as an academic exercise, every like culturally generated harmonic system does tend to have the commonality of the octave, which is a doubling in frequency is perceived as the same pitch in a higher register.
Mm-hmm.
A doubling in frequency is the same pitch perceived in a higher register. If you take A440 and double the frequency to 880 hertz, you get another A an octave higher. That relationship seems to carry across like culturally generated tonal systems. Some of this is that like physically those are the harmonics that we get from like a vibrating string. So like there is a physical component to like why we hear harmony the way we do as like a factor of like doublings of frequency. I like to think about you know, our pitch perception is all based around like the log of base 2, the logarithms of base 2. In this, frequency scales to pitch exponentially. Inversely, pitch scales to frequency logarithmically by a scale of log 2. And so I do wonder if an alien species, if anyone's making an alien movie and wants like weird alien music for it, I can explore this concept auditorily. But I think it'd be really cool to like construct a harmonic system that breaks from octave equivalency, which those systems already exist. Bolin-Pierce is one, for instance. Bolin-Pierce is like a constructed harmonic system that was like created as an academic exercise by Mr. Bolin and Mr. Pierce. Bolin-Pierce music is based on a tripling of frequency as opposed to a doubling of frequency. It sounds weird as fuck. I don't find many of the intervals to be very... All of the intervals of Bolin-Pierce sound kind of weird. It's 13 tones equally spaced throughout a tritave, which is a tripling in frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I digress. My cool big idea for like a microtonal alien harmonic system is, okay, all human harmonic systems are more or less based around the logarithm of 2. What if you had a harmonic system that was based around the natural logarithm, around doublings of E, Euler's number? Euler's number is really cool. It bears relationships to pi, as Euler also proved with e to the power of I pi, I being the square root of -1. E to the power of I pi equals -1, which just that equation shows that all three of those numbers, despite pi and e being transcendental and I being like on a completely different complex plane, that equation all adds up to create a real number, -1.
Yeah.
I just think that's so cool. I think that like E, like pi, is like one of those numbers that just shows up everywhere and is almost like this fingerprint of reality.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to try and argue that there is like a hand of the maker, I think it's E and it's pi. And like less so the Fibonacci numbers. I think the Fibonacci numbers are just like an interesting convergent thing. Some people will try to argue that like the Fibonacci numbers and the Fibonacci spiral are like the fingerprint of God. I think that's horse shit. But I think like pi and E, there might be something there. I love at the end of the Contact book where they get into like, oh yeah, it like 10 to the 23 digits down in pi, it like starts repeating or something. And like in base 11, it like forms a perfect circle. And that being like a fingerprint of like a higher power. I love that idea, and I love the idea that like math kind of gives us this glimpse into the fabric of reality. And E and pi are very much there, and pi is very much related to like the oscillation of frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
If you like want to construct a sine wave on like a graphing calculator, you iterate you graph the sine from 0 to 2 pi, and it creates non-octave equivalency systems. Somebody hire me to write a score that's written in E as the octave equivalent.
I hope that happens.
Yeah. Sorry, I went on way long there. Next question.
Go for it. The thing is, I am not a musician. I haven't had a music lesson since elementary school.
Yeah. Oh, also,
and so that's I'm just happy to let you go and say your thing.
Amazing, thank you. Also, with this question, I wanted to address. I think because I like make a Khalees Tabernac joke somewhere in one of our episodes. And also in the Arrival episode, I talk a lot about Quebec and the University of Montreal. I have no associations with Quebec. I studied French in high school. I'm not very good at it. Ma français est très merde. I have tried to learn French and Spanish and kind of struggle at both. Go figure. But anyways, I have stealing valor from Quebec. I just think that your swear words are fantastic. A tabarnak sits in like the same place of your mouth as fuck. It's really good.
I love that you like it so much.
I love Quebecois swear words.
Yeah.
Shout out to Quebec and your sacres.
Yeah. And shout out to all of the David socialites who live in Quebec.
And shout out to Engine de Poitras.
True. I'm gonna say shout out to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, but
sure,
you don't need to join me on that.
King Gizzard can come on the pod and we can
you know what?
And they can school me as to why they actually did do their homework.
The thing that we have to give them, they took all of their music off of Spotify.
Yeah, we're at least there.
Yeah.
But I also,
we can shake hands on that.
But like I also took all my music off of Spotify, so like that's just the bar.
It is well, I mean, like there's a lot of musicians we both like who are still on Spotify.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So, yeah. So I like their music. I think they're kind of jammy.
Fair
enough. I think they're just fucking around a little bit.
I think they're just not my deal.
And that's fine.
I think I approach music in a very different way.
It definitely. Absolutely. I'm a music layman. I like my sounds,
So real.
So next question, a couple questions from Michael on YouTube. The first one, I really loved your first episode. Looking forward to episode 2. E.T. the Extraterrestrial would be a great movie to cover, or the classic Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Buddy, you're going to love our second episode.
Yeah. So that one we did cover. And then I'm also going to read the second comment. Great episode as always. The Alien and Predator franchises are a goldmine for content for future episodes. Also, Star Trek First Contact would be a very fitting option. I love when we get recommendations.
Yeah.
I think currently we have a roadmap for the rest of our first season.
Yeah, we have a 12 episode season.
Yeah, so
mapped out.
We have another 8 movies that we know that we're doing. That we have planned out. After that, we're not totally sure what we're doing.
Yeah.
We've talked about, to speak to E.T., we've talked about doing like a children's movie season.
I really want to do a children's movie arc.
Yeah, I would love to do that at some point. I think that would be a lot of fun. We could talk about good movies like E.T.
Everyone ignores the narratives in kids' movies.
Yeah, and we can put to the test. We make 4.5 hour long episodes of this podcast.
Yeah.
Can we do the same thing with a kids movie?
Yeah.
This is the ultimate test. We can talk about that.
We're looking at an alien horror arc.
Yes, yeah. So like Alien and Predator, I love both of those movies so much. Those are 2 of my favorite movies, and I would love to talk about them for the podcast. And I would love to do an alien horror season.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much to dig into there.
Yeah. The thing I will like explain and ask for patience on from our listeners, because I think it's really important that we do like Alien, that we do some version of War of the Worlds. I think it's also important that we do like District 9 at some point. That was originally going to be for this season.
Yeah.
I apologize to you, the listener. I am a weenie. I been through a lot in the last couple of years, and part of that is that consuming media has been like real hard for me, and already this podcast is like an explicit exercise for me in like watching media that makes me kind of uncomfortable. And we are dipping our toes in the shallow end. I cannot stress enough. So in a couple of seasons, once I've got a little bit more watching horror movies under my belt, then we're going to touch on some of the grittier, more difficult stuff that is absolutely important to discuss within this genre.
Yes, definitely. That is
I feel like discussing it before then will simply result in like for instance, not giving District 9 the justice that it deserves in being a movie very explicitly about apartheid.
Yes, I think there's a season where we talk about War of the Worlds and District 9 and a lot of the there's a genre of like post contact and first contact movies that are a lot grittier and darker and heavier that I think like Beyond You not feeling ready or like emotionally prepared to dip into those. I think that's also something that we both agreed that we want to do more research on and give them the proper care and attention that they really deserve. Not that these movies don't deserve attention.
They do, but I think they're movies that we were a little bit more equipped to start out with.
Exactly, that's what I was about to say. It's like these are things that we felt good to talk about, and so eventually we will get to Alien and Predator and movies of that ilk. I'm a real fucking horror movie sicko, and so I'm excited.
I think I want to be able to, I want to build the strength to be able to watch horror movies because I feel like horror is such an interesting genre that could open up to me so much if I could just like literally get past the fact that like I have a panic attack when something stressful happens on screen.
Yeah. I hope if that's a thing that you want to get past, I hope you're able to get past it. But ultimately, if it's just a road we can't go down, then it's a road we can't go down.
Yeah. Just to like give some behind baseball as we're talking about like movies that may or may not be on the horizon.
Yeah. Is it? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
And I will issue as Michael and anyone else listening, as you suggest movies for us, I will issue the challenge. As you suggest us movies, try to like nerd snipe us.
Oh,
because like
I
will say like we have heard of Alien versus Predator. Like try to I'm curious to be given recommendations of like more obscure media that we've maybe not heard about.
Yeah.
So I'll issue that little bounty.
Yes.
If you can really snipe us with a movie, we might insert it into the order where it wasn't previously.
Yeah. I think I love to hear the movies that people want to hear us talk about.
Yeah.
And I will always encourage people to leave those comments and say that they're excited to hear our opinions. But I would love to be nerd sniped.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Michael.
Yes, and also Star Trek: First Contact. I want to talk about Star Trek at some point.
Oh my God, we're going to be talking about Star Trek at some point.
We can do a Star Trek season. There's a lot to talk about there. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll become a Star Trek rewatch podcast in a dark future.
Yeah.
Or in a very bright future where we've gone through all of the movies. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much, Michael. Those were very great comments, and I appreciate them. And do you want to read the next one?
Yeah, from QQCS on David Social. Shout out to our David Socialites. Dear should have sent a poet. While listening to the Close Encounters of the Third Kind episode, I was disgusted when I clearly heard one uncensored version of and also I can't believe I was tricked and allowed myself to be exposed to the placement of these products. I hope you enjoy sitting on the massive piles of dirty pop and bus money. Yours, a listener. I wish we were sitting on dirty pop money. I'm a disabled woman and I'm like staring down the barrel of my disability payments running out. This is a podcast that's begging for employment. I swear to God.
Yeah.
But I thank you for that critique. I will say that was a little something I like to call a fluke. And I will also argue that by at least making the attempt to censor product placement, which I think started as just like a running joke of this podcast, is I was like, I think it'd be funny to censor product placement.
Yeah.
I have gotten you thinking about it. So now I've poisoned all of your ears and you're going to go watch like a movie now that has product placement in it and you're going to recognize it and it's going to be so much louder than it was previously. And so I've won. I've achieved my mission of opening your eyes to every product placement you see. I've achieved my mission of making you aware of every time you're being sold something.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the strongest muscles you can have in your media analysis repertoire right now is when am I being sold something?
Yeah.
That is your biggest tool against propaganda.
It is. It's a good way to build it. I think the only valid product placement in a movie that I can think of is the airing of the original Star Wars movies on TV in, I believe it was in South America,
It
where
was
there
in
were
Colombia, I believe, or
yeah,
Peru.
where they had ads that would play like interspersed with
And
the movie.
it just like you would think that Obi-Wan is just like a raging alcoholic who's that keeps sneaking off to drink a sneaky beer.
It fucking rocks.
It's so good.
That's the best way to do advertising.
Yeah,
because it's not like it's in the universe. It's very clearly not.
Yeah,
but it keeps immersion.
it's in text.
It's so good. It's
in
so
text,
good.
Yeah. Also, I think like I won't censor products when we're like disparaging them, like Spotify, because everyone needs to know they suck.
Yeah.
Ice collaborators.
Yeah.
Fuck Spotify.
Fucking Spotify has so many issues wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I could make an entire episode of this podcast about how awful Spotify is.
Yeah. So there's a reason that we dirty their name as much as possible, and why you can't listen to this podcast on Spotify.
Yeah, that explicitly we are everywhere except for Spotify.
I guess unless you get like an RSS feed, and then maybe you can upload it to Spotify.
Like you can probably get our podcast in the Spotify player, but we're not on the service.
Yeah, because fuck them. And our next question, a couple questions from friend of the pod, Dar. I also want to say that Sarah is a friend of the pod.
I don't know either of these people, so thank you.
Yes, these are college friends of mine. Dar asked a couple questions that have less to do with science fiction, the stuff that we've been talking about largely, and more about movies in general. His first question: how do you feel about live action remakes, Disney pretty much, and do you think they will go away soon, especially since some of them are really flopping?
I fucking hope so.
I really hope so. So my thing is, I think the first one the one that sticks out in my mind as like the first one that I think I saw, the only one that I've seen of these live action remakes is the Lion King remake.
That's the one that I think about.
Yeah. And my issue is it's not a live action remake.
It's not. It's an still animation.
Movie. It's an animated movie, and it's gorgeous. I think that's like the thing that I'll give it. It's like really pretty. It is kind of like uncanny when they're singing, but like genuinely like the craft that went into animating all of that is really, really impressive and cool. And I wish that it was for something better. That is like my kind of like on the Lion King, and then generally I have an issue with remakes categorically a lot of the time, just because most things don't need to be remade.
Yeah, I agree. I think most things don't need to be remade. I think that like broadly a lot of like, because like what there's remakes and then there's like alternate adaptations.
Yeah,
I think for instance like a shining example of an alternate adaptation is that I really like the Villeneuve Dune movies. I think that they do an amazing job with the source material. I think in a lot of ways because it's Denis Villeneuve making this movie in the 2020s, he astutely omits a lot of Frank Herbert's 1970s bullshit.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I liked the Villeneuve Dune movies more than I liked reading the novel. Which is a very contrarian take for a lot of people. But
Maybe one
that's
of the people on this podcast. I like that book.
Fair enough.
It's got issues. It's got big issues.
And I think it's like, like critical read, like Dune is a good book and like an influential novel, but I do think the Villeneuve Dune doesn't make me want to throw up in my mouth in the same way as Frank Herbert Dune.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's an example of like an alternate adaptation because Villeneuve Dune isn't in line with like Lynch Dune or Jodorowsky Dune. They're just both adapting the same book.
Yeah.
I think remakes by and large are lazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only time I can't think of an actual example of this, I think like the prototype of like a good movie remake would be remaking something where the visual effects of the time just weren't there.
Yeah.
And even then I think that gets like real fuzzy because like you can do a lot of cool stuff with practical effects, and often like the creativity that limitation breeds is so much more entertaining than what you get with CGI even. But like, you know, I'm just talking about like some abstract movie where like, sure, I guess CGI like serves some specific effect better than.
Yeah.
I don't even have an example of that. I'm just supposing that like that's a thing that could exist.
Yeah, maybe
But
like Tron Legacy. Like, is that like a?
like
I
maybe
haven't seen the Tron movies, but I feel like maybe like that's like
I
a,
think
a visual
I
space.
think maybe spiritually it's like Tron Legacy is that. Tron Legacy is a different story
Yeah,
from the
it's a
original
sequel,
Tron,
but
but it is
like
like it's, you know, neither Tron movie is like, they're both kind of playing in like a loose narrative space where like I Tron, the original Tron maybe has more to say than Tron Legacy, and certainly more to say than Tron Ares. But like both movies are very vibe focused.
yeah,
Um, you know, I think the reason that Tron Legacy is an important movie to me isn't that like the acting or the story or the way that it treats women are particularly good.
yeah,
Um, I think the reason that Tron Legacy is compelling to me is that EL Wire costumes were like had a stranglehold on 2010 fashion, and Daft Punk did the soundtrack, and it was like the first electronic music soundtrack I heard
hmm
in a movie theater. And the opening track, The Grid, like sends chills down my spine even still when I listen to it. What a great opening line! What a great synth piece. And the original Tron is kind of in a similar place where like I would be interested to see a cut of the original Tron where instead of that weird grainy green screen thing that they're doing, which very impressive for the film technology of the time, and I even think a lot of the like very basic 3D renders that exist in that film, Tron, the original Tron is one of the first movies to make use of 3D rendering.
yeah,
Um, I even think like the basic 3D renders in that film are like fantastic and like don't change it. But I like, yeah, in theory, if you were to recut the original Tron to have like the more modern composited light effects,
yeah,
like that could be cool.
yeah,
But I don't, yeah, I think like broadly, the fact that I can't come up with a movie that has actually successfully done that, I think is really lends my position of like, yeah, a good live action remake or a good like CGI remake is possible, but I don't think it exists.
yeah. And I think like in general, the idea of like special effects previously being really bad, and like wanting to fix them. That's kind of how we get the special editions of the original trilogy of Star Wars. And
Yeah.
like the main issue with that is that you can't get the original cuts of the
Yeah,
movie
that's
anymore.
more that the original cuts are now lost to history.
Yeah, and it's like the special editions are bad. They pretty much like universally make changes that are not good.
They retcon Han shooting first.
We don't need to discord.
He did, by the way.
He did shoot first. It is part of his character arc. And that's all I'll say about it. I don't need to. I'm sure people listening to this agree with me.
Yeah.
But just like all of the CGI additions and stuff that they add in the special editions, like 90% of them are bad, and
Yeah.
the fact that you can't get the original cuts is the real issue. But I think just like that ethos of like the thing that we already have isn't good enough, and I think if you're gonna go back and like touch up special effects and like or like replace them with CGI like entirely or anything like that, you might as well. At that point, maybe you should just only do it if the movie is like begging for a remake. Like they just
Yeah.
like didn't get it right the first time.
Yeah, I think
Like there are
that's
interesting ideas and things that you want to play on, but you want to do it better.
Yeah, I think that's the real. I think we're in agreement there. It's like
Yeah.
the platonic ideal of a remake would be a movie that they didn't get right the first time, but that has an interesting nugget that still needs to be expanded upon.
Yeah, the only movies that I want to see remade are movies that were bad and or flopped.
Yeah. And I think like as like the Disney live action remakes specifically go, it's a shameless cash grab, and it's
Yeah,
been a shameless
yeah,
cash grab the entire time. All of the original Disney animated films are based off of Brothers Grimm stories that had gone into the public domain. It's a cash grab. This is the mouse.
yeah, yeah.
We're in the specter of the mouse.
We're in the specter of the mouse. Hopefully they go away. If they don't, it sucks, and I wish the money that goes into producing them went to other things, but I think like ultimately it's not ruining anything for me personally.
Yeah.
I think it's annoying and stupid,
Yeah.
and I wish the resources were going somewhere else, but like I'm a person who didn't really watch a ton of movies growing up, especially kids movies, and so I don't have any strong attachment to the movies that they've remade.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's my piece.
Yeah. I also want to add that like there is a specific business incentive as to why they keep doing this. It's like it's both that like the marketing number crunchers have like done the math and decided that like a remake will have more of an audience that will buy tickets. Like, a remake will just sell more tickets than an original film is like one component of this, but the other component of this is like part of why some remakes happen when they do. Maybe less so with something like the Moana remake that's coming out right now, because Moana is like not even 10 years old, I think.
It might be like literally 10 years old on the dot or something.
Moana is like a very contemporary movie. I remember when I was too old for not that you're like too old for like a musical, but like I was in the age group where I was like a little bit too old for the age bracket of Moana when it came out.
Yeah,
being like targeted primarily at kids, and with some of the other ones, like I don't know, some of the like more fairy tale, like twisted fairy tale stuff that came out in like the 2010s, a lot of that is trademark protection. A lot of the time reboots happen because they need to protect the trademark on like, like Sleeping Beauty. Because if you don't, if you don't, this is part of what's going on with the Patagonia clothing versus the drag queen Patagonia, and why they're like slap suiting her for $1. Is I don't think that this makes it right. I think that like you shouldn't. It's a place in South America before any of this.
Yeah.
I don't think you should be able to trademark a name like that. I think also like Amazon runs into this.
Mm-hmm.
But like part of why that lawsuit is even happening to begin with is because like Patagonia has to, quotes, has to protect their trademark in order to continue like trading exclusively as Patagonia clothing.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's really cynical. It's really shitty. That's the way that a lot of business is. Business is a really like cynical and shitty thing, and it erodes your soul to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, like that's why like that's the economic reason for why a lot of remakes keep getting made, is like it's merchandising. We think this is a sure thing, but it is also like we need to protect the trademark of this. We need to protect the trademark of the Lion King for another 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. And it fucking sucks.
It sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. It's not good.
Capitalism is the enemy of good art.
Amen. And then our last question, also from Dar. What do you think? Okay, sorry, let me restart that. What do you think is the best way to adapt a video game to a movie? Direct follow-up with characters playing the cast, or more so a new story set in the same universe? I think it's super interesting, especially depending on which genre the games are from. So backstory for me, I used to do game development in college pretty extensively. And so that's where Dar and I know each other, from game development. And I think for me, I don't see a reason to. So to answer the question, I think the best way to adapt a video game would be another story set in the same universe. I think the thing about video games is that the mechanical interaction is what makes the video game the video game. And so I feel like if you want to adapt that story into a movie, it kind of like says something about how you view the video game, like the art of the video game, like the art form of video games, and sort of like what the artistic value of that specific game is. It's like one thing if you want to like I don't know, like the Tomb Raider and Uncharted movies feel kind of silly to me, because the thing that those games are is I want to be Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
and so I'm playing these video games.
It's a video game based off. It's a movie based off a video game that's based off of a movie.
Exactly, and so it gets kind of silly at that point, where I don't see the inherent value. And you can just a lot of the time I'm just like, you can make something similar inspired by it and just different. It doesn't need to be that exact thing. Because like the reason that you want to play the video game is the mechanics, or like ideally that's the reason you want to. Like the setting and stuff can be cool, in which case like ancillary storytelling, like additional stuff is really awesome. Like there's like a lot of tie-in comics and novels for video games. Like I've never read like the Halo novels, but like I've heard some really good things about some of them. And that is the kind of stuff that I would like to see more from adaptation of video games. If we're going to see anything, just because I think that adapting a video game's narrative, kind of defeats the purpose of the video game in a lot of ways, and it feels more cash grabby than anything.
Yeah, I think we're in alignment here, and I don't have like a ton to add. I think like all of the best like video game movies I have seen are like it's set in the universe of this video game. You see all of your favorite friends, you see all of your characters, you get to see these spaces that you've traversed as a video game character, and that gives you your like spectacle, like ooh I've been here moment. It's like playing a lot of GTA 5 and then going to Santa Monica and being like oh
shit.
But like I think like video game movies that try to engage like really directly with the plot of the game they're based off of, it is just a little bit like, well, obviously like people have threaded the needle of like narrative first video games. I know like Undertale and Deltarune get like held up here. I think also like the Portal games do this really well, where like there's this cool underlying story that like is accompanied by like really fantastic gameplay.
Yeah.
But most games are mechanics first. And the story kind of, it's like both a priorities thing, but it's also like a production timeline thing of like, oftentimes the story gets grafted onto the game at the very end.
Yeah.
And this maybe has changed a little bit because there's been this longstanding perception that game narratives tend to be kind of bad. But by and large, over the span of video games as they've existed for the last 50 years, narrative usually comes after mechanics. And with adapting a game into a movie, you're removing mechanics entirely and shifting just to narrative. And so the narrative you have has to be damn good for it to be worth your time. Otherwise, it's just a bad video game that you don't get to play.
Yeah.
It's Sonic 06. It's and like actually I think one of the better recent video game movie adaptation franchises is the Sonic movies. I think they're like really fun, and they're not trying to like, they're playing in the space of the Sonic games, but they're their own thing. They like Dr. Eggman is like Jim Carrey being a weirdo. Yeah. And they quite literally did give him a gold pen script for Sonic 2 because that's what he demanded.
Yeah.
No, I think like and also just like, I think this is emblemized by like, remember the first Sonic movie, the trailers came out and everyone was like up in arms because Sonic looked like fucking ugly.
Yeah.
I don't know a nicer way to say that. It's a 3D model. The Sonic did not look good.
It looked bad.
And so they were like, okay, we're delaying the movie. They went back to the drawing board. They made Sonic look right. And it's like a funny buddy comedy, like buddy cop movie.
Yeah.
And it like exists on the merits of being a buddy cop movie that is set within the Sonic universe.
Yeah. And like plays to the cool things about Sonic.
It's a narrative that would have been it's a movie that could have been made if Sonic had not been attached to it.
Yes.
And it could have existed on those merits. And with that, grafting Sonic, the themes of Sonic and the characters of Sonic into it amplify the narrative structures.
Yeah. One might argue that Sonic is kind of the perfect character to do a movie adaptation for.
Yeah.
Because
Sonic has also had a lot of narrative work made about him.
Yes, and like the comics and there's like cartoons and stuff, but beyond that, like the games don't really have a really strong like mechanical identity.
Yeah.
If you look at them as like a grand scheme. and most of them aren't very good.
Yeah, it's like there's some platforming, there's some other stuff.
Yeah, but like it's like when you make a movie, you get all of the good parts of Sonic.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about playing a really bad platformer.
Yeah.
Which happens a lot when you play Sonic. Sorry, I think he's cool. I like Tails. I like all of the Sonic characters.
Gotta go fast.
The games aren't always good, guys. Don't kill me.
Yeah. All right. Like, I think, like, sorry, I literally have the Wikipedia page of a list of films based off of video games because as you brought this up, I needed to like refresh my mind.
Yeah.
But I think Detective Pikachu is like another really fun one where it's just a noir film set within the Pokemon universe.
Which I love.
And Pokemon is another franchise that has like built its own rich universe so that it can tell narratives that exist within the same universe as the games. But the TV show is not the games, and the movie is not the games. Okay, yeah, because there's also like all the there's all of the like Pokemon movies that exist within the fiction of the TV show.
Yeah.
That usually revolve around discovery of like a legendary Pokemon.
Yeah, like and it's like I think the Pokemon TV show is like really good.
We can do the Giratina movie at some point.
Oh, that'd be pretty sick.
I remember liking that as a kid.
I didn't.
He's
really
like kind of
Pokemon.
an alien.
A lot of the Pokemon are. But yeah, the Five Nights at Freddy's movies, those are terrible, but like fun in I like a bad movie way.
Yeah. I remember you saying that you liked Iron Lung.
I like Iron Lung enough. I have like thoughts about it. Like it's not like a really great film. I might have been a little positive in my coverage on the blog, but it is exciting as like a project in a lot of ways, which I think made me a lot kinder to all of the issues that it has.
Yeah, I think Markiplier just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I remember when Markiplier was shilling PewDiePie after the Nazi incident, Markiplier maybe apologize for that. I know you're not listening to this podcast, but like, yeah, I know that's one that got some more positive critical reception.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen Iron Lung, nor have I played Iron Lung, so I feel like I've backed myself into a corner here. I mostly wanted to shit talk Markiplier.
Yeah, that's fair. We might be getting the best video game movie ever made later this year with a new Resident Evil movie from Zach Krieger.
Oh my god. I also saw way down at in early production. It doesn't even have a release, but according to this Wikipedia page, there is a Watch Dogs movie in the works.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess.
I've been replaying Watch Dogs 1 recently. It better not be about Aiden Pierce. I don't want to watch a movie about that guy.
My favorite video game character, Aiden Pierce.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that kind of answers it. I think you got to be real careful, and a lot of the time I would rather just see another story set in the same universe.
I think all of this if we have to watch a video game movie, I think a separate plot that is just set within this rich fictive world, because I think that's one of the things video games excel at is building a rich world.
Yeah.
Maybe this is also just that I love open world video games, but like I love the rich world that a video game can build. And so I think taking that world and setting a compelling movie narrative within it is the ideal way to adapt a movie or adapt a video game into a film.
Yeah, and I think like I haven't seen it, but like the Fallout show does this kind of where it's like it's not about any of like the characters or plots that the main games are.
They're like
about as far as I know.
They're like in the Mojave like 90 years after the events of New Vegas.
Yeah, and so it's like I think that is a good decision it's in the world and it's giving you more of the thing that you like about Fallout without just like retracing a thing that like the video game does better by virtue of being a video game. So thank you for that question, or both of those questions, Dar.
Yeah.
Thank you for everybody who wrote in.
Yeah, thank you.
We really, really appreciate it.
I love attention.
Yes, I love attention too. That's why we're podcasters. And then I think that is going to do it for this episode, folks. Please rate, review, and share the podcast so we can continue talking about the science fiction that fills our hearts and minds. And again, if you have any questions or thoughts you'd like to share, you can leave comments on wherever you're listening, or you can send us an email at submissions@poetspod.com. And you may show up in the next episode like this, which will be 5 episodes from now.
Yeah, and the next, I'll just lay out the next arc. We're doing Landscape with Invisible Hand, and then after that, we are doing Men in Black.
And
then after Men in Black,
Pacific Rim.
We're doing Pacific Rim.
And then Starship Troopers.
And then Starship Troopers.
Yes, those are our next 4.
Yeah.
But Landscape with Invisible Hand, lesser known movie from 2023.
Yeah.
You'll have to. You can't buy it physically. It's not on streaming, so you're gonna have to rent it or do something.
Or go
cooler.
to your library.
Or go to your library, see if they've got it on there.
They probably have it on Canopy.
I don't think they do.
They don't.
I would have to double check.
Maybe if you're in a different library from our city.
Oh yeah.
Check your library's Canopy. It might be there.
Yeah, but or you can not pay for it.
Yeah.
By other means.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the one that we're going to be doing next. There's also a novel, but not required reading by any means.
Yeah, we'll be reading it.
Yes, and thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with us. And until next time, be good and watch movies.
See y'all.
Bye.